Good morning. The committee will come to order. I thank everyone for joining us this morning, and especially thank the small business owners from across the country who have taken time from their busy schedule to be here today. In particular, I would like to welcome Gia Jesolo, owner of Brooklyn Pharmacy and Soda Fountain from my district. Thank you all for coming here today. Every year going back to the 1960s, our nation has recognized National Small Business Week. While on this committee, we're focused on improving opportunities for Main Street every week. Today is a special opportunity to celebrate the national recognition of small businesses, which truly are the backbone of our economy. This morning, we will hear directly from small firms that we, as members of this committee, have been given the privilege of representing in Congress. Today in America, there are 30 million small businesses that support over 56 million jobs, and these firms are as diverse as the American people. Joining us today are small businesses in a wide array of industries, such as restaurant, retail, manufacturing, and farming. And as we will hear, they are making their communities stronger, adding character to our main streets and fueling our economy. I would like to thank each and every small business owner testifying today for making the trip here and being a part of this important week and conversation. Throughout our history, so much of the American dream has been about starting a small business, creating jobs, and building communities around Main Street. When we talk about taking a risk, no one exemplifies that better than small businesses. While today is certainly an opportunity to celebrate and hear the success stories of small businesses, we also acknowledge that starting a business is often not without its own set of challenges. Access to affordable capital, finding and retaining talented workers, accessing new customers, and competing against larger corporations all provide headwinds for small business success. Being the only committee dedicated solely to the needs of small firms, we are committed to promoting policies that encourage economic prosperity on Main Street. That is why I am excited to hear from entrepreneurs from across the country on the successful journey you have made. Today, we will be able to learn so much from these heroes of small business about determination, hard work, and creativity that truly reflect the American spirit. With that, I thank each of the witnesses for taking the time away from your business to join us today. I look forward to your testimony. I now would like to yield to the ranking member, Mr. Shabbat, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you for having this hearing today. I'd like to also welcome everyone, including our distinguished witnesses, to National Small Business Week. This week celebrates and honors the hardest workers in the country, as far as I'm concerned. They rise early and retire well after sundown on a daily basis, often wearing many hats throughout the day to ensure their customers are satisfied, their workers have what they need to get the job done, and that their company is a success. You are the nation's entrepreneurs and startups and small businesses, and your stories define the American dream. You deserve the ability to operate freely without the federal government causing roadblocks and getting in your way. We want you developing the next product and service, not laboring over burdensome regulations. We want you creating jobs, not poring over compliance paperwork. You play a critically important role by representing over 30 million small businesses that operate all across the country. You create nearly 2 out of every 3 new jobs in the American economy. To put it simply, you are the driving force in the American economy. That's why it's critical for this committee to continue. It's bipartisan. We work both across party lines, Republicans and Democrats. I'd prefer to be the chair, but, you know, it didn't happen last time, and we work with the chairwoman, and she's great. So we work together to create jobs and try to get it right for America's small businesses. Main streets across the country all look different, but they all have one thing in common. They all have the most dedicated and innovative workers around. From Ohio to Minnesota to Florida, the nation's small businesses are busy moving forward. I want to thank you for joining us today and sacrificing time away from your growing businesses. Some of you traveled across our great country to speak with us today, and we appreciate your time and your thoughts. And if I ever stop talking, we'll get to them. We look forward to talking with you and listening to your stories and hearing about your successes from retail to real estate and factories to farms. Your impact is vast and important to America. And before I yield back, I want to let all of those in attendance know, especially our small business witnesses, that you've all got great members of Congress representing you, really on both sides here. The members of our committee for the 116th Congress, and I think the chairwoman would agree with me on this, are, I think, perhaps the most engaged of any group that we've seen in a while, both Republicans and Democrats alike. Just about everybody is at every hearing, working across party lines to produce real bipartisan legislation that benefits the American small business owners. So it's an honor to serve with them, and I hope you send them all back to the next Congress. Now, after saying that we're all here at every hearing, I have to announce that I have to go back to Judiciary and Foreign Affairs. We're dealing with the Attorney General and contempt motions there, and we're dealing with the simple matter of China in Foreign Affairs. So those issues pale in comparison to the issues dealt with in here, but I have to head over there, and I want to thank Mr. Hagedorn in advance for filling in for me and my other colleagues who will be filling in after him. So thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Thank you. And I agree with the gentleman that this is a committee that works in a bipartisan way. We are here to really represent your issues. And I have to say that when I was the ranking member, he treated me with respect. Now, as a chairwoman, I'm doing the same, but I have to recognize there's nothing more important than holding the gavel. So, who's going to be sitting here?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
Welcome. I would like to take just a few minutes to explain the timing rules. Each witness gets 5 minutes to testify, and members get 5 minutes for questioning. There is a lighting system to assist you. The green light comes on when you begin, and the yellow light means that there is 1 minute remaining. The red light comes on when you are out of time, and we ask that you stay within the time frame to the best of your ability. We will begin with introductions for each panel before moving on to your testimony. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Jesolo, owner of the Brooklyn Pharmacy and Soda Fountain located in my district. Brooklyn Pharmacy opened its store in 2010 and since then has been serving up fresh, friendly, and delicious sundaes, sodas, and ice cream floats. Along the way, Ms. Jesolo has worked closely with our local Small Business Development Center on business planning and recently obtained an SBA loan she can continue to grow Brooklyn Pharmacy. While running her business, Ms. Jesolo remains committed to improving her community by hiring neighborhood youth each year and offering leadership opportunities to aspiring local entrepreneurs. Nominated in 2016 and as New York's Small Business Person of the Year, in so many ways, she embodies the American dream, and Brooklyn Pharmacy reminds us that a great food company never goes out of style. Welcome, Ms. Jesolo. I'm very happy you could be with us today. I would like now to yield to Ms. Craig from Minnesota to introduce our second witness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm honored to introduce to the committee Mrs. Amy Fox of Spiral Brewing of Hastings, Minnesota, in my congressional district. I also want to introduce to the committee her husband, Nick, and sister-in-law, Jen Fox, who are seated behind her this morning. Madam Chair, when members were asked to invite a hero of the small business community to testify before our committee, Amy and her team immediately came to mind to share their story here today. Spiral Brewery has an amazing story to tell. It is a women-owned business that has been open for just over a year now. And in that time, it has proven itself to be a destination brewery and tap room that excels in sharing its craft. And I've been there, and it's been shared with me many times. Over the past year, Spiral Brewery has become a destination for beer lovers across Minnesota's metropolitan area and a beer to seek out at liquor stores, bars, and restaurants in our region. I'm eager to have Amy tell you a little bit more about her entrepreneurial experience. And again, I'm so honored and pleased that they are able to be here with us today. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Craig. Now I would like to yield to my colleague from New York, Mr. Delgado, to introduce our next witness.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I am thrilled to introduce my friend and an exemplary small business owner from New York 19, Nels Leader, Vice President of Bread Alone Bakery, as he testifies about the economic success and sustainable business practices of Bread Alone Bakery in Kingston, New York. In 1983, Daniel Leader, Nels' father, moved to the Catskill Mountains and started a small business baking naturally fermented artisan breads he sold out of the trunk of the family station wagon. Today, Bread Alone Bakery has grown to 4 locations across Hudson Valley and the Catskill Mountains, to farmers markets, and to dozens of retailers across New York State. Under Nels' leadership, Bread Alone has expanded and maintained its commitment to certified organic artisan bread and to our planet. The Leader family kicked off their 35th year in business in 2018 by launching a solar array on the roof of their headquarters in Kingston. And last year, at least 25% of Bread Alone's energy came from the sun. In addition to serving as vice president of the family business, Nels is a trained climate leader for Al Gore's Climate Reality Project and a lecturer at the MBA in Sustainability program at Bard College in New York 19. Nels Leader is also a community leader in Hudson Valley and Catskills as he serves on the board of Woodstock Land Conservancy and Farm Ferments. Nels holds a BA in economics from Colby College and an MBA from NYU's Stern School of Business. The engine of New York's 19th economy, New York 19's economy, is the work of small businesses and farms. As we join to celebrate Small Business Week, I am proud to host Nels Leader and highlight the example of Bread Alone, an innovative small business that continues to improve while honoring their family roots. Good to have you here. I yield back, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Delgado. And now, finally, I would like to yield to my colleague from Minnesota, Mr. Hagedorn, to introduce our last witness on our first panel.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate you holding this hearing and celebrating Small Business Week. It's a pleasure and honor to be with you. I have the pleasure to introduce you, Mr. Robert Hoffman, and his wife, Angie, seated behind him, from the great city of Albert Lea, Minnesota, down there at the intersection of I-90 and I-35. And the Hoffmans own Robert Hoffman Realty Incorporated, small real estate and brokerage and property management firm in Albert Lea. The Hoffmans are licensed in Minnesota and Iowa, and they specialize in residential, rental, and commercial real estate sales and management in southern Minnesota. Owners Angie and Robert are each licensed in real estate and members of the Realtors Association, the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association, and the Hoffmans own and manage about 80 rentals and are active volunteers, pillars of the community in Albert Lea with their work and dedication, the Humane Society, the Chamber of Commerce, Lions Club, Heritage Preservation Committee, and the Children's Center, and their local political organization, believe it or not. And the Hoffmans don't happen to have children, but they do have 4 rescue dogs, and we welcome you. And I'm looking forward to your testimony, Robert. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Hagedorn. Ms. Jesolo, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Hello, is that working? Yep. Okay. All right. Hello, my name is Gia Jesolo, and I am the co-owner, along with my brother, Peter Freeman, of the Brooklyn Pharmacy and Soda Fountain. I want to thank Madam Chairwoman Nadia Velasquez for inviting me and the committee to participate in this testimony. It is my honor to be here, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of small businesses. There are a million faces of small businesses, and I am just one. I'm here to give a face to one small business. And I'm here in solidarity with all the other small businesses across America. Like me, they are committed to making their street, their state, and their country a better place. I'm also here to express my gratitude to the Small Business Association and the NYBDC, who invested in us and who continue to support us. We received a 504 loan from the NYBDC, and we were also graciously awarded the Small Family Business of the Year. I would not be here with you, speaking to you today, without their commitment. Their support came to us and allowed us to invest in our business when, despite our best efforts, no big banks would. Finally, and most importantly, I am here today because I strongly believe that small businesses provide priceless contributions towards the overall wealth and health of a community, and therefore deserve your special attention and support. We are like you in that we serve our community. So I invite you to visit us, and I invite you to speak with us. The Brooklyn Pharmacy is located on the corner of Henry and Sackett in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn. We're housed in a restored apothecary, and the original interior boasts a 100-year-old penny tile floor, wooden drawers, and a tin ceiling. There are 9 red twirling bar stools and a Bastion Blessing soda fountain made in Chicago. We are a full-service soda fountain with a staff of 15. We are best known for our creative ice cream sundaes with names like Affogazi Affogato and the Sundae of Broken Dreams, made with vanilla ice cream, warm caramel, broken pretzel rods, and fresh whipped cream. In the late 1940s, before drive-thrus and bottled sodas, the number of soda fountains in America reached 125,000 at its height. There was a fountain on almost every main street, USA, serving as a watering hole for the community. Today, the Brooklyn Pharmacy is one of only a handful of full-service soda fountains in America, but we proudly serve the same purpose as a gathering spot for young and old alike. We're a slam dunk for visiting grandparents, as well as several regulars who are just hitting the ripe age of 4. It's been 9 years since we opened our doors in 2010, and since then we've watched gap-toothed kids turn into college-bound kids, several of them we've hired. We've hosted birthdays, anniversaries, and showers. We've made hundreds of egg creams at local fundraisers. We've hosted senators and assembly members for civic talks, even a wedding. The pink bench outside our store has seen more than one bent knee proposal. We donate year-round to schools, and class visits are a regular event. We have been featured on numerous cooking shows and media outlets. We are visited by tour groups from all over the world, and we offer free egg creams all day on election days, this most recently noted in an editorial in the New York Times on how businesses can encourage citizens to vote. Though we are a tourist attraction, we are committed to our neighborhood. With weekly events like Tot Sing-Alongs, a knitting group, and a civics night, we have the opportunity to be part of our community, and in the end, serve them more than something to eat. We have antique rotary phones, typewriters, and adding machines. In fact, our collections are getting a bit out of hand. We have comic books, piles of them, that we gently place on the table if the cell phones come out. We have candles and songs for birthdays. We make treats before your eyes, and sometimes we invent things on the spot because, hey kid, that's a good idea. We source locally, and we pride ourselves on working with vendors, some of whom deliver items on their bike. Our staff is offered flexible schedules, and many have worked with us for years as we employ them through schooling, travel, sports, and performance schedules. We strive to foster community amongst our staff, and we value their voices. We know that we are not the last train stop for them, so to speak, but we encourage them to embrace the philosophy of how you do anything is how you do everything. We value hard work and by example teach them. For many, we are a first job after school and weekends. We also value the transitional time for youth gaining independence, and we provide a safe place in a big city for those that are away from home for the first time. Can I have 10 more seconds, please? Okay. This isn't to say that this isn't a hard game to play. As business owners, we often wear all the hats. If you give us an 8th day of the week, we'd probably work it. The costs associated with doing business can be almost prohibitive, from insurances to payroll taxes to credit card swipe fees, all before we've even bought a tub of ice cream. A big company has the resources to hire for all these positions, yet a small business person often needs to juggle many positions at once. Look at me, a designer, marketer, copywriter, photographer, event planner, social media producer, window designer, chef, waitress, soda jerk, and on some occasions a dishwasher who trains, schedules, hires, and fires. For the record, I'm a mother of 2 teenagers, and this summer I will be celebrating 25 years of marriage. As I said from the beginning, I believe that small businesses provide immeasurable value to neighborhoods and communities. In our case, memories are created before our eyes. First birthdays, first egg creams, first jobs. We are the spot tourists plan to visit or find by luck. We are the spot you bring your visiting sister, and we are the spot you come to sit alone at the counter to read the paper. We are a real place. We are that place. We value our customers, and by extension, we value our community. We are not just the corner store, soda fountain, a business without a face. I am my customer's neighbor, and I am the face of a small business in America. I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Jesolo. And now, Ms. Fox, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Velasquez, and the other members of the House Small Business Committee for the opportunity to speak with you about Spiral Brewery and our experience as a small business in Hastings, Minnesota. Thank you also to Representative Craig for inviting Nick, Jen, and I here today to testify and represent Minnesota's 2nd Congressional District and our hometown. About 6 years ago, we started dreaming of beer. Jen, Nick, and I were drinking Minnesota craft beer and discussing our deep love for our hometown, Hastings, Minnesota. In that moment, we saw Spiral Brewery. After a few months of dreaming, we started transforming our big ideas into a plan, with countless and tiring hours of industry research and informational interviews with the generous craft beer community in Minnesota. We had the beginning of a business plan. After being reconnected with our friends Luke McGuire and Claire Sandahl, we had the beer and we had our team. At this time, the craft beer market was beginning to boom in Minnesota, but our region was completely void of a taproom and distribution brewery. Hastings is a unique town on the Mississippi River that was in a time of transition and growth. The combination of this geographical brewery void, the town's continued growth, and our desire to contribute to our beloved hometown made it the perfect time to bring Spiral Brewery to fruition in Hastings' historic downtown riverfront district. After releasing our business plan in 2015, in order to publicly announce Spiral Brewery, we began working with the City of Hastings to amend brewing ordinances and regulations. We are grateful that the city, both staff and elected officials, and our local Chamber of Commerce are supportive of new business, and we're yearning for creative entrepreneurs. Opening a brewery is an extremely expensive and small business endeavor. Spiral Brewery needed to raise $1.2 million for the initial construction and upfront costs. Through consultation and advice from the brewing community, industry research, and valued business consultants, we knew we'd like to solicit over half our funds from an SBA loan to support our business. Finding a financial institution to back a brewery is a complex process and quickly became one of our biggest challenges. Our team met with and discussed possible loans with about 10 different financial institutions locally and statewide. We ended up securing funds through Pioneer Bank out of Mankato, Minnesota. Pioneer Bank makes it their business to support brewing and distilling in Minnesota. They understand the beer and liquor industry and are willing to learn and grow with their customers. This was most apparent in their creative structuring of our financing. Pioneer Bank's intimate knowledge of the SBA 504 loan program, along with the expertise of Prairie Land Economic Development Corporation, our SBA loan financier, allowed for the appropriate budgetary line items to be covered under the SBA 504 loan, while other items were financed by a loan direct from the bank. Simply put, Spiral Brewery would not be able to open without the financial assistance from our lender and the SBA 504 loan program. The remaining financing of Spiral Brewery came through individual equity investors. With community being in the forefront of our business, a community-based funding model was developed with nearly 100% of our equity investors coming directly from the Hastings area. It has been this community support that has been one of our biggest joys and kept us going through the countless challenges of opening Spiral Brewery. They continue to be a pillar of support in our ongoing progress. Every day, our Spiral team act as manufacturers, custodians, event planners, servers, apparel designers, saleswomen, delivery drivers, and cicerones. Running a small business comes with daily joys and challenges, as we often face unexpected hurdles. But we would not be where we are today without each one of our backgrounds and experiences. Spiral Brewery has been open for just a year now, and we have become a destination brewery that distributes to bars, restaurants, and liquor stores. Our brewery adds to the vitality of established small businesses along our main street, where over half are also women-owned and operated. Spiral builds and encourages our local business and helps our city prosper with new people to experience our community and spend time and money in our historic downtown district. The story of Spiral Brewery encourages our community to believe in people with a dream and supports people who work hard for things they are passionate about. Thank you again for allowing me to testify today before the Small Business Committee. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Fox, and you were on time. Mr. Leader, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I appreciate your time very much. My family and I own and operate Bread Alone Bakery, a certified organic bakery in upstate New York. We have about 200 employees, and every day ship about 15,000 loaves of bread to our customers around the Northeast. I'm here today to share with you the story of Bread Alone and some observations from running our business. There wasn't an exact plan when my father started the business in 1983. He was a philosophy major, guided by his instincts. He ended up in cooking school with contemporaries like Anthony Bourdain. In reflecting on his decision to start a bakery, he said, "Sometimes you have to lose your mind to come to your senses." As a young child, I can remember my dad trying to teach me the responsibilities of running a business. I remember him showing me the newspaper, pointing out the challenges that people faced in our community and around the world. Though we were never a political family, there was always a civic ingredient in our breads. By baking simple, honest food, my father contributed to our community. By setting an example of a simple, moral life, my father aspired to touch more people than he could feed. We use a quote from Nelson Mandela to capture this spirit of the business. "Let there be work, bread, water, and salt for all." I joined the business 7 years ago, fresh from business school and experiences gained from my first career as a consultant. I found my passion at Bread Alone, though, building a thriving, viable company that also sustains our people and planet. In this way, I strive to honor the history of Bread Alone while maintaining a healthy bottom line. First, a few words about our people. Unemployment in our area is as low as 3.6%, but the poverty rate is as high as 20%. The fact of the matter is that economics of hourly work are untenable for too many of our employees and community members. Though Bread Alone's average hourly wage is 50% above the New York minimum and more than double federal, support services are insufficient. Too many of our employees lack affordable childcare. Healthcare is too expensive. Employees don't have access to transportation to and from work. What would be a basic life interruption to many, a car breakdown, a sick child, becomes an obstacle to economic freedom and well-being. Some of our employees have spent time in the criminal justice system, often from a young age. These employees often know little else. Adaptation to the workplace is a struggle. I see our employees striving to do well, build a career and a family, but the deck is stacked against them. We live a contradiction at the bakery. We're surrounded by underemployed individuals, yet building a quality team remains our biggest challenge. Though we invest all we can back into our employees, financial realities only allow us to do so much. This is where government can be most effective. Provide the support that our hourly employees need to overcome the bumps and bruises of life, a health emergency, job retraining, even a brush with the law. When you invest more in your working class constituents, you build up the workforce and give small businesses like Bread Alone the ability to thrive. And now some words about our planet. The last 4 years are the hottest 4 years on record. I lived on East 7th Street in New York City when Hurricane Sandy brought floodwaters to within blocks of my apartment. Did the Capitol feel warm last month? It was. It was about 6 degrees above the average for April. While the brunt of climate change is borne by the least fortunate among us, we all feel its effects, even at the bakery. A historic bomb cyclone in the Midwest this past April flooded over 1 million acres of farmland. Farmers are struggling to get crops in the ground for the harvest, so prices may increase this fall. I hope for us and for all the hardworking farmers across the world, these dramatic conditions subside. But hope is not a plan. We must decarbonize our economy to avoid the worst effects of climate change. One of the farmers, Marcia Cargill, that my father visited in the early days said, "If we don't take care of our land and take care of it now, who will?" To this end, we've rolled up our sleeves at the bakery and gotten to work. On Earth Day 2018, we officially commissioned a 196 kilowatt solar array on the roof of our bakery. We've committed to getting to 100% renewable energy by 2030, and we plan to get there much faster than that. This means more solar energy, adoption of battery electric vehicles, energy efficiency retrofits, and more. This process is not easy, but the good news is that our customers want to see changes like never before. A record high 72% of Americans indicate that global warming is personally important to them. 83% of millennials indicate that they want companies to implement sustainability programs. Both business and small government have an incredible opportunity to respond. We have the technology. Our customers and constituents want to change. But under current conditions, resource-constrained small businesses struggle to invest now what they won't see back until later. This is a market failure that the government can fix by more aggressively incentivizing investments in renewable energy and sustainable technologies. Bridge this gap, and small businesses will thrive by delivering both what our customers want and what our world needs. One more point. Decision-making is one of the constant challenges of running a business. Decisions never feel perfect. They are often scary. Almost all require change and adjustment over time. We always remind the team at the bakery, progress, not perfection. The only bad decision is not making one at all. The world will pass you by. I'm not a policymaker, but I imagine that your work is extremely difficult. So many competing interests and constituents to address, not to mention different views of the world within yourselves. But supporting the best work of your small businesses demands action. During your time of public service, I urge you to embrace the moment, each other, and the opportunity to serve your constituents. Like the small businesses in front of you, seek progress every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. And now, Mr. Hoffman, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. A very interesting panel to follow after listening to the two speak on their food service and the brewery. I personally quit drinking quite a few years ago, but speaking in front of Congress, a beer is starting to sound pretty amazing. My wife and I haven't traveled in a long time, and this is our first time actually leaving because of the small business that we own. As a matter of fact, I own a small business that you've probably all heard of. There's a Robert Hoffman Realty in every single city in every single state, and honestly, most of them aren't Robert Hoffman Realties, and many of them aren't real estate companies at all. But we all know a Jensen Excavating, or we've all had Mrs. Gerry Salads. We've all been saved by Jim Kelly from Kelly Plumbing and Heating. We've bought flowers from Addie's Florals, or had our watches fixed at Fisher's Jewelers. It just turns out that we're really not good at naming our companies. We've all just named them after ourselves. I don't think we have the time or the resources for a proper advertising campaign. My name, as I've mentioned, is Robert Hoffman. I just run a small real estate brokerage in Albert Lea, Minnesota. So small that it is Robert Hoffman Realty, and I actually don't even own it. My wife, Angie, owns 51% of our S Corp, so Angie owns Robert Hoffman and Robert Hoffman Realty. A lot of lost arguments happen when I say, I'm Robert Hoffman, and she says, I own Robert Hoffman Realty. Right after college, I started in real estate, and now I have about 15 years of real estate experience. And what I want to talk about just quickly is that small towns are obviously the hometowns to small business, and every little bit helps in small business. My wife recently was able to leave her career of 11 years to work for our small business, and that's not nothing when it comes to small business. For her to leave a large, fair corporate position with a local newspaper that she was at for 11 years to come work for our small business is actually an honor. We've actually been married for 514 weeks today. We got married on Wednesday, July 1st, and every Wednesday I've wished her a week-iversary, and today is our 514th week-iversary. We'll actually have been married for 10 years this July. Angie and I actually met at a leadership class, and again, how every little bit helps. I walked into a random leadership class in Albert Lea, sat next to a, as you can see, very good-looking gal, asked her what she was doing that weekend, and she accidentally gave away my surprise birthday party. So that is how I met my wife, who I currently work for. So that's how I met my boss. Like Jim had said, we are a small business. We just run and manage and own 80 rental units, a nice real estate brokerage in Albert Lea. We do commercial real estate as well, and one of our successes is we've helped sell a couple of vacant Walmarts to a nice company called Baumgars from our area. As a matter of fact, one of the Walmarts that we sold that was vacant was in Jim's Blue Earth and in my Albert Lee. A success story to that was filling places that were void. In Albert Lee, it actually sat vacant for 10 years, and then we were able to fill it. With Jim's, that was the second one we had sold, and that one didn't take as long. You start to feel good about selling Walmarts when you get a few of them under your belt. However, if you've sold one or two, you've sold all of them in your region. Our small business, like so many other small businesses, have the little things that help a lot. And our downtown just went through a nice revitalization where my office is located. So having the historic grants to help with our downtown revitalization has helped my small business grow. And as a matter of fact, this weekend, Albert Lee is actually hosting the governor's fishing opener. So a small group of people got together and said, you know, I think it's going to help with Albert Lee and our businesses if we dredge our lake. And they started that about 12 years ago. Now our lake is being dredged, and this weekend our governor's fishing opener is in Albert Lee. So again, all these little things really do help. Many have given their all to see small businesses succeed. We chose not to have kids. Work came first. This is the only second time we've ever traveled. You can tell the small businesses mean a lot to people. To even pull a punch and say that this doesn't mean everything to us, obviously I'd be lying. We've had our successes and our failures. We have concerns of one small accident and we're not there to run the business anymore. We have employees that work for us and look to us for their employment. If something goes wrong with that, it's rather intimidating to not be there for them. So like I'd mentioned, small businesses thrive in small towns, and every little bit helps. Just a real quick conclusion to things is just a small story I like to tell about any situation, but it definitely reflects small business. And the story goes, there's a gentleman in a hole screaming for help, and a small business government regulator walks up and says, I'll pass a new law, and walks away. And the gentleman, scared and in this hole, is still yelling for help. So then an inspector walks up and says, we'll change the process so this never happens again, and walks away. And this small business owner is in a hole, scared and still screaming for help. Then another small business person jumps in the hole with him. And he says, you're crazy. Now we're both in the hole together. And the other small business owner says, yes, but I've been down before and I know the way out. So every little bit helps. We appreciate things as small as even this hearing or anything that you guys do for us in the future. I appreciate all the time.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Let me thank all of the witnesses. Your moving stories, powerful. I wish that every member of Congress were here, because sometimes, as Mr. Leader said, we need that synergy of the work that you do to improve and strengthen Main Street, but also how can the government play an important role, whether it's knowing the unintended consequences of legislation that we pass, and that you are not an afterthought, that you are provided a voice, and that is exactly what we're trying to do here. So thank you so much for all the work that you do. And when people say that small businesses is the engine that fuel our economy, we mean it in this committee. So, Ms. Jesolo, I just would like to hear from you, what was your experience, as well as Ms. Fox, because both of you got an SBA 504 commercial lending, commercial loan that you went through, and if there is any improvements that you feel should be made to help expedite, streamline the process? How can we better improve the lending programs? Because that is one area that I intend to put some energy into.
I'm very happy to answer that question. And first of all, just want to again reiterate that one of the unique aspects of working with the SBA and the NYBDC to get the loan is that they heard and took into account our story. Because, you know, as you've heard, like the small business is not just a business. There's actually people behind it, and there's a story. And I felt, you know, when we walked into the big banks and we started off with telling our story, we came down to 3 pieces of paper that they needed to analyze in order to give us funds. We were more than those 3 pieces of paper. And so I just want to acknowledge the process in that way, that the totality of who we were was taken into account. I think that the process took longer than it needed to, and I think that there was information about what was needed from us that could have been given more in the front, that then would take, you know, more time to produce reports, et cetera. So I think that the streamlining of the process could be stronger.
Thank you.
I also think just to get some younger people in some of those higher positions who are hungry,
Thank you.
like we are.
Thank you. Ms. Fox?
I would actually just second everything that she just mentioned. We actually were pretty lucky in finding Pioneer Bank because, unlike your experience, we actually found a partner that did listen to our story and found that important. And actually, we've had a really seamless process working with them and Prairie Land, who was our financier, going through the 504 loan process. It was pretty smooth. I mean, having just opened a brewery, we were very comfortable with mountains of paperwork, so that wasn't unusual to us, but they really made it seamless and explained everything, and were really accommodating to our schedule and getting it all to work.
Thank you. Mr. Leader, I am so pleased to see how you have grown, and in the process, you have done so in an eco-friendly manner. And I really thank you for your commitment to sustainability and protecting our environment. But there is also one thing that you mentioned that struck a chord, and that is investing in the working class, investing in workers. How do you suggest that government can do, what can we do? What type of investment? Is it infrastructure? Is it training, retraining?
Sure. Thank you so much for the question and the opportunity to talk about this a little bit more. I'll start. I'm going to relay a very brief personal story. I think, like many people in this room, I recently dealt with the care of an elderly person in my family and saw them through the end of their life. And in 2 recent experiences, I engaged with the Medicare system, and it worked well. My grandparents were able to pass with dignity, and the family was able to maintain our lives without sacrificing our economic well-being because of the success of that program. What I see every day as a small business owner is that security, that healthcare security, simply doesn't exist for too many of our working class employees. So an issue that affects all of us, and I know this isn't a new issue to highlight for you all, but it deserves extra attention, and I want to use my time here to highlight it because that cost and the lack of security that our employees have in their life needs to be fixed.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman, you mentioned that renovations in your downtown area has led to many successful businesses, and that cleaning up a local lake will potentially bring in more tourism. Do you think that a large-scale infrastructure package that modernized roads, bridges, and lakes in towns like Albert Lee would spur economic development in those areas?
I honestly do, but I don't want to fall peril to not the small pieces of the puzzle as well. Small deed grants that were available for buildings such as mine in a historic area that helped small businesses with the non-sexy things with our buildings sure have helped. Smaller scale. Large, broad stroke, and large sweeping programs definitely do help, but often look past the smaller ones of us.
Thank you. And I now recognize Mr. Hagedorn.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the testimony of all the witnesses, and congratulations on building up successful small businesses. It's very difficult. A lot of businesses, unfortunately, don't make it to your level, and so we commend you and appreciate what you're doing for our communities. Ms. Fox, I'd say thank you for mentioning Pioneer Bank and Mankato. Those community banks, small businesses as well, helping you, and it's I guess that access to capital is pretty important, isn't it? what would you have done if you couldn't go out and borrow the money or get the loans in order to start your business? It would have been tough. Thank you. And Robert, it's good to see you, Mr. Hoffman. Knowing you a little bit, I can tell you that you are a hard worker. You're the embodiment of what it means to be a small business person, you and Angie both. And you put your capital at risk. You put everything into this business. You work hard. You're entrepreneurial, innovative, and what you do is so critically important for our communities. You're helping to sustain folks and help them find a nice roof over their heads. You're creating opportunities where maybe sometimes the big box stores leave our little towns, and you're trying to fill those and make sure that our communities are as vibrant as possible. And we appreciate all that. Robert, what exactly, when you look at government's role, you talked a little bit about that, being down there needing help. Government can be good and government can be bad. In the areas of regulations and taxes, energy, workforce, healthcare, what are your thoughts about what's been good and maybe what needs to be better?
Honestly, Jim, I'm in real estate, so we don't really have much for regulation or paperwork, which is not true at all. We probably spend more time in regulation in our industry than we do improving our industry, and I think that makes us take 2 steps back every time we try and start a race. Somewhere we fall peril to is being so close to Iowa with a different business structure in both business and real estate development. One example, obviously, is the Affordable Care Act isn't affordable for employers. Another example is we see a strong brain drain in our region to larger areas that just plain may offer a little bit more. And the brain drain, students leaving and not returning, has actually led to a generation drain. So the students will leave, Albert Lee, for example, start a family somewhere else, and then soon to follow is actually their parents, who were community members of ours, but left now to be near their grandchildren. If we had something to make things just a little bit easier to sustain the population rather than maybe lose, and honestly, we haven't even been talking about growth yet. We aren't in growth. We're just trying to sustain. So yes, a lot of extra regulation has made it honestly a little bit easier to leave than it has been to stay. As with investors, it's easier not to invest in real estate in my area in particular than it is to invest. And what has led to is no new market rate apartments have been built in my town since 1990. So it's tough to grow a community when we don't have a roof for the new people trying to move to town.
So there's some competition between, for instance, big businesses that can offer benefits and have some hooks to bring in folks to be employed, and smaller businesses that sometimes have a tough time competing. And then there's also a little difference between some urban areas and the rural areas. And you think that it would be important for government to have some extra incentives to make sure that folks have opportunities in the rural areas, and that
Yes, I definitely do, especially, like I said, under the umbrella of housing. Right now, if somebody was to look to Albert Lee to come live, whether being a teacher, an officer, or a new transferee to a company, and they know they may not buy a home right away, but they're looking for just a comfortable market rate rental to live in, and we don't have that to offer, we just plain lose them now to communities just a little bit larger than ours who do have that housing available. And we don't have housing being built in town because it's just far too expensive to do it. Not just expensive in the wood, the shingles, and the windows, but the regulations required and behind housing in Minnesota is so expensive. There was a recent MinPost article just last week stating building a building in Minnesota or across the river in Wisconsin, that it's close to 30% more expensive to build in Minnesota. Wow. Real tough to compete.
Maybe this weekend when you have the governor down for the fishing opener, you can talk to him a little bit about
that. A couple of friends of mine that I honestly grew up with and had a paper route together are the two hosting the governors. Yeah, I'm going to put a few bugs in their ears. They'll be in the boat with them for quite a while.
We appreciate your appearance. Thank you very much, Madam
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you. The gentleman's time has expired, and now we recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Delgado, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, each and every one of you, for your truly inspiring stories, and to hear you all speak with such love and affection and passion for what you do. It's incredibly heartwarming. So thank you for your dedication and for your commitment and all the opportunities that you provide for others in your community. I want to personally thank you, Nels, for coming. It's good to have you here and good to hear from you. I want to talk a little bit about, or at least revisit your conversation about the need to invest in green energy technology and so much of the incredible work that you and the company as a whole has done to invest and help spur that growth and take us into the right direction. As somebody who has sort of prioritized this, can you describe for me the ways that Congress can play a role in incentivizing sustainable behavior so small businesses and owners like yourself are able to build and promote small green businesses?
Absolutely, and thank you for the question and for having me here, Congressman Delgado. I greatly appreciate it. So let me start by saying that as big as this problem is, in it, I see incredible opportunity for small business. I highlighted in my testimony that folks want to support sustainable businesses out in the world. They want to vote with their dollars, but everyone's life is busy, so you have to give them an easy choice. We have to do a lot of the work for them. But there's great opportunity for small businesses to respond to that demand. To your question, Congressman Delgado, of what do we do, let me give you some examples of what does work and what doesn't work. I'm going to start with the latter, what doesn't work. In winter 2018, when Britni was planning the solar array for our bakery, Washington announced and then rolled out a 30% import tariff on solar panels. That changed the economics of our project overnight. We had to spend money in soft costs to replan it, and then the economics of the project overall weren't as strong. So that sort of signal to business that there's uncertainty in doing this work is not what we like to see. No business likes uncertainty. So we can't do that. What we can do, there are lots of tools that are established that work to incentivize investments within business. The Section 179 program is a wonderful program. That allows Britni to purchase equipment and depreciate it on an accelerated basis, thereby bringing down the cost of the equipment. That's a great program. Federal investment tax credits on renewable energy, that is a great program. So those are examples of things that Congress can promote, extend, do more of to incentivize renewable energy with small business.
That was great, thank you. And just a quick follow-up. You know, obviously there are environmental benefits. You know, that is the goal. But you know, from a business mindset, can you detail a bit of the economic outcomes from your vantage point with these kinds of investments?
Yeah, great. Again, thank you for the follow-up, because that's a critical point. I highlighted earlier in my testimony that although I have these values as an individual, I also see after the bottom line of our business, and I come from a very traditional business background. So I don't make decisions just out of a moral judgment. I do it because it's good for our business. We financed our solar array in a way that's essentially cost neutral. We could have financed it a little bit longer, and it would have been cash flow positive. Right now, across this country, the least expensive ways to create energy are through solar and wind. That's the least expensive way that we know to create energy on this earth. So when you substitute more expensive energy with less expensive energy, you can save money. It's a scary investment that pays out over the long term, and that's where government can step in to solve that market failure.
Thank you, man. With that, I yield back my time. Thank you, Chairwoman.
The gentleman yields back, and now we recognize Mr. Hearn, ranking member of the Subcommittee on Economic Growth, Tax, and Capital Access from Oklahoma, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Really appreciate you all being here today, and your testimony is certainly near and dear to my heart. I've been a small business person for 34 years, job creator, franchisee, banking, manufacturing. I could go on, 30 or 40 small businesses today. I appreciate you. Mr. Leader, first of all, you got a cool name. I was just thinking if you were to come into Congress and get on the majority side, your name would actually be Leader. Yeah. So it'd be kind of cool.
I have a new career goal.
Yeah, there you go. So put that on your bucket list, right? Yeah. But no, it's great to see you all here. And, you know, one of the things that, I've never ran for office before. And so when I got here, it was sort of amazing to me, the lack of people agree with your stories. They like your stories that are people have never been in business before. But I've also found it interesting when business people come here that they think the federal government has an unlimited amount of money and that somehow they can do it better than you can as individuals. I applaud you and each of you individually that have done things for sustainability. I could talk about many, many things that we all need to do and have done to protect our environment. And like you said, you have to still watch out for the bottom line. The federal government, quite frankly, is part of the problems that many people who have ideas can't get into business because of the regulatory processes. In fact, you had mentioned that healthcare costs, and I think, Mr. Hoffman, you mentioned it also. Prior to 2010, I saw we had 200 employees. Prior to 2010, did you offer health insurance?
I joined the family business in 2012, and I'd be stepping a little bit out of my comfort zone talking about what we were doing prior to 2010 and earlier.
Sure. Because quite frankly, the cost went up dramatically. I offered insurance for years, and the cost went up dramatically when we centralized the health care to the United States government as opposed to individual markets. It's just a fact. We can talk about, we can disagree all day long. It's just not the truth to say it didn't happen. But when we talk about these things, you mentioned, and I want to make sure to give everybody a chance here, thoughts, because you have varying levels of employment base, which puts you, sort of divides you. Even in this group up here, the federal government has done a great job of dividing you up as small business people to pit you one against the other, or not two or three of you care about what the other person says just based on your employee base. And I think if we truly cared about all employees, all people, we would take all regulations down to the smallest employee base of one. And that way, everybody's in lockstep and really truly caring about the individual worker. So with that said, let's just start here on this end. And what are some of the regulatory processes that you've seen in your business life so far that you'd like to see maybe the government get out of your hair?
Well, there's always the health department that I think in New York City is a bit outrageous. I mean, I think that we just sort of budget in for it, but
I'm sorry, if we could, let's keep it on the federal level, because I agree with you. We could get rid of the health departments.
I'm going to yield actually for that, because I feel like we're small, and I don't feel like we besides the loans that we've taken, we don't have a lot of regulatory.
So tax issues. I mean, tax affects you obviously a lot.
I mean, taxes. I mean, I would love to be able to offer my employees health insurance. I mean, I think I can agree and say that this is a point that I can't afford to do, and I would very much like to. But I'm going to yield.
Okay, Ms. Fox.
I know one of the biggest areas for us has to do with the federal excise tax, and would encourage all of you to support keeping that low, but also consider support for an even lower bracket. Right now, the lowest possible bracket ranges in producing between 0 and 60,000 barrels of beer a year, and we in our first year are going to be at about 1,000. So it really would help equal the playing field for those new small microbreweries to be able to compete.
Thank you. And Mr. Leader, I want to, because I'm going to run out of time here, I'd love to talk to you all day, all of you all. But you mentioned 179. Yep. I'm very familiar with that. QIP obviously affects if you have a storefront and retail, and certainly would affect you dramatically as well. I want you to know this, that it's actually a technical issue in the tax code. It is available if we could just get it signed off on. And while this is a very bipartisan committee, I also want to tell you that it's being sort of held hostage right now to be traded off for something else. And it affects small businesses in a real way. To being able to write off stuff this year so you can employ more people, put more capital to work. So I would encourage us all to take what you all have talked about here today, go back and talk to our fellow constituents, our fellow congressmen and women, and ask them to support the change on the QIP and the Section 179 bonus depreciation, accelerated depreciation tactics that we have out there.
Do I have a moment to respond?
Time has expired. I could give you 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I would just thank you for the question, Congressman Hurd, and comments. The Section 179 to me is such a great example of where government and business can work together. So I know you initially asked about places where I'd like to see less regulation, but I love to focus on victories and areas of alignment, and that's one great example, and I know there are a lot more.
Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired, and now I recognize the gentle lady from Minnesota, Ms. Craig, for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. My question is for Amy Fox. You noted in your testimony that you are a woman-owned business, a women-owned business. I'd like to hear more about and ask you to describe some of the unique challenges, but also opportunities that have presented themselves as a woman-owned business.
Sure, I would be happy to speak on that. I know I've heard Representative Craig say many times that beer is bipartisan, and it is, but really it's still, the craft beer industry is still a man's game. And it's pretty rare to have a majority woman-owned and operated brewery. At least I know in Minnesota, and I would imagine it would be nationally as well. And so, you know, it does come with challenges being women-owned. In the process of opening Spiral Brewery, you know, we did a lot of meetings that my husband and I would take. We did experience some sexism and different things where all of the people we were meeting with would always address my husband first, even though I was the one with the numbers and the information, and he would kindly then defer to me. So there was some of that. But beyond that, there are also just, I find that Jen and I both have to work a little harder to prove ourselves. So especially like in sales, you know, liquor store owners and bar and restaurant managers or buyers are really used to talking to a bearded man. And so when we come in and try and sell, we have to work that much harder to prove that we're knowledgeable and that we have a good product. And then there's also physical challenges. Despite how strong I may look, I cannot lift a full keg into the back of a car, for example. So Jen and I do most of the delivering, so there are some challenges with that. But we're really happy and proud to be joining the downtown Hastings district, where well over half are also majority women-owned, and we look forward to, you know, working to change those perceptions.
You know, the Hastings community is one of those just beautiful river towns that we have across my congressional district, but across America. Not too long ago, though, some of those river towns didn't have a ton of development in them. One of the most unique parts of going to Spiral Brewery is just the equity ownership from people inside the community. You can literally see just partial ownership by neighbors. Tell me a little bit about how building and maintaining those community relationships has impacted your business, and what has it done for your town as well?
Well, we definitely wouldn't be here today without the support of our community, both financially and in many other ways, but we were luckily able to secure 34 different individual equity investors on a minimum level, and they all had a connection to our community, most of which live in our community. And so it's really important, and they feel that ownership, and they come to the tap room all the time. And we wouldn't be here without their support.
That's great. And then my final question is really about expansion opportunities. I know that you're now distributing to liquor stores and other areas around the community. Are any barriers that you have in sort of just breaking into that broader market with so many microbreweries and big breweries in Minnesota? And how can we make it easier for a small business like yours to expand?
I did just already speak on the federal excise tax. That's definitely something that would help a small and microbrewery, help to level the playing field and compete. And then other than that, it's really, you know, we're in our first year of business and money is tight. And you need money to spend money and you need money to grow. So it's been interesting trying to figure out how to do that, you know, and little things like mobile canning lines that have now popped up. We don't have the space or the money to invest in equipment ourselves. So, you know, we're able to use companies like that to come in and can for us, and it opens up a whole nother industry, an area for us to sell to.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for your incredible success.
Thanks for having us.
And Madam Chairwoman, I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back, and now we recognize Mr. Stuber from Minnesota, ranking member of the Subcommittee on Contracting and Infrastructure, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Fox, I obviously came in here late, and my question was for you was going to be on the per barrel tax from $15 to $7.50. Because you've only been in business for a year, you have not experienced that yet?
No, we only opened in 2018, so we luckily were able to jump in right at that lower level.
Okay, I could share with you another brewery in the district that I serve in Two Harbors, Minnesota, saved $60,000 from that change from the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. That was real money for that hometown brewery. I just wanted to share that with you, so good luck.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. And let me take this opportunity to thank again our distinguished panel for taking time to be with us. And you are now excused, and we will now take a moment to get our next panel set up. Thank you.
You guys did great. You guys, you brought this to light.
Oh my gosh, it was really fun hearing the stories because there were things you said. I was like, yes, and then it's just
Like
we
when
all
you
had
gave your
kind of a
list, I
different
was like, oh,
angle.
yeah, you got both
when
of
you
us.
did the list, I was like, of course.
Yeah.
But it is. You wear a lot of hats.
You are very welcome.
Good luck to the governor.
Yeah.
right. Welcome to our witnesses on today's second panel, and I'll take a minute to introduce you before turning it over for your testimony. It's my privilege to introduce our first witness, Mr. Jason Brochu, the president and co-owner of Pleasant River Lumber in my district, in the 2nd Congressional District of the state of Maine. Pleasant River Lumber is 100% U.S. family-owned Maine business with 4 generations of experience in the forest products industry. Over the years, they've built their reputation on quality, service, and attention to detail. In fact, an example of that detail is stamping an American flag on pieces of lumber that come out of their mill. Perhaps Jason will talk a little bit about that. I anticipate that we're going to hear a little bit from Mr. Brochu about unfair trade practices today that at times put American businesses at a disadvantage, and I think that many people would agree that there are many good American businesses out there that can compete globally with any business in the world, but tough for them to compete with a government. And that's something that Jason is going to go into a little bit of detail about today, whether it be dumping of steel or dumping of lumber. At times, we have to make sure that we're putting in place the proper policies to protect our businesses from unfair trade practices of other countries' governments. I'd say very quickly to you all here, this is a great hearing. I'm going to enjoy very much. The Small Business Committee, I think, is a special place in Washington. Many people I've heard come from other committees talking about how the discussion and the debate had their blood temperature running hot, and then they come in here and things cool down because we have a pretty bipartisan focus and reputation on how we can help small businesses. Not a lot of party politics in here. Instead, focusing on how we can work together to help small businesses like Pleasant River. So with that, I would like to just say thank you for coming to Jason, and also his brother Chris is here. And next, I would like to turn it over to Ms. Houlihan from Pennsylvania to introduce our next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to all of the panel for joining us today. And it is my privilege to introduce Mr. Bill Scalish from my community, from the beautiful Pennsylvania 6th Congressional District. I think he will also have some similar conversation regarding trade practices and tariffs as well, which are seminal to the disadvantage that his business experienced. But Mr. Scalish, from a background, has offered products and services to the hospitality industry for over 35 years. During his career, he became a top-performing independent sales rep for Vermax in Salt Lake City, and in the early 90s accepted the position of National Sales Marketing Director. At that time, Vermax was the largest cultured marble manufacturer of vanity tops and tub surrounds, serving the hospitality industry. After leaving that organization, he moved back to Pennsylvania in 1999 to once again become an independent factory rep for several manufacturers. Previous to that, and right out of high school, Mr. Scalish served a 4-year apprenticeship with the IBEW and became an inside journeyman wireman for the IBEW 654. Currently, Mr. Scalish owns 2 companies, the Benchmark Group as well as the Granite Tech, Inc. And Benchmark is an independent rep organization that performs the sales and marketing functions, and Granite Tech is structured solely as an import company. Granite Tech and Benchmark Group, LLCs, current customer base includes the hospitality, multifamily, and senior living and student housing industries. In addition to Mr. Scalish's professional career, he also has had the privilege of serving on the Board of Supervisors for the Franklin Township located in Archester County, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir, and for sharing your stories with us.
Thank you, Ms. Houlihan. Finally, I'd like to yield to my colleague from Minnesota and the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Contracting and Infrastructure, Mr. Stauber, to introduce our last witness. And I would just want to say, Mr. Cordis, Mackey, very quickly, later this month, Mr. Stauber has invited me to come out to your community to take part in a field hearing that I look forward to very much to see your state, and you got a great representative here in Congress, so thank you.
Thank you for those kind words, Chairman Golden. It is a pleasure to work with you on this committee and the rest of our colleagues. Today I'd like to introduce a very good friend of mine from Duluth, Minnesota, hard worker, great family, and just a really good friend of mine, Mr. Gerry Mackey. He owns London Road Rental Center in Duluth, Minnesota. Mr. Cordis Mackey is the owner of London Road Rental Center in Duluth, Minnesota. Gerry is an expert in the field. London Road Rental offers tools and equipment rentals in its Duluth, Minnesota location, and party, wedding, and event rentals and supplies in its Superior, Wisconsin location. Thanks to Mr. Cordis Mackey's hard work, he now runs a business that spans northern Minnesota and Wisconsin. Mr. Cordis Mackey is also active in the American Rental Association, advocating the rentals industry growth, and he's also an active member in the NFIB community. Welcome, Gerry.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stauber. With this, I'll turn it over to our panel, and we'll start with Mr. Brochu, who's recognized for 5 minutes.
Okay. Congressman Goldman, members of the committee, thank you for having me here today. I'm here to provide testimony regarding issues that affect my business in Maine, Pleasant River Lumber Company. Pleasant River owns and operates 4 sawmills and a trucking company in the state of Maine. Our current employment is about 300 people, and we're in the middle of a capital expansion project that will increase our capacity by 50%, increase our employment by close to 20%, and we're spending about $25 million throughout our operations. We're primarily a producer of softwood lumber that is used for housing construction throughout the United States. I'll touch on 4 issues today briefly: trade, taxes, labor, and infrastructure. Critical part of the business environment for our company is the ability to operate our business free of foreign unfair trade practices. For our company, that means addressing Canada's unfair trade practices through the U.S. trade laws, or by implementing an effective quantitative restraint agreement against subsidized and dumped Canadian lumber imports. The U.S. industry successfully launched trade cases against Canada in November of 2016, resulting in anti-dumping and countervailing duty rates, which have forced Canada to adjust their unfair trade and market behavior and allowed our industry to expand. For my company specifically, leveling the playing field against Canadian unfair trade practices is allowing us to make the necessary investments to double or increase our capacity by 50% and add a lot of jobs. This means not only adding jobs, but making more lumber in the state of Maine and more lumber for the U.S. housing market produced in the U.S. Today, the U.S. lumber industry, through its association with the U.S. Lumber Coalition, is working tirelessly to maintain and defend this trade case against Canada's unfair trade practices by working with the administration on NAFTA and WTO appeals, as well as litigating the first administrative reviews of the anti-dumping and countervailing duty orders before the Commerce Department, under which importers' actual duty liability is assessed. This is a rigorous administrative process that we're very involved in. Taxes, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and listening to some of the testimony earlier, people have touched on this already, has been very helpful to our business in a couple of different ways. Reducing the corporate tax rate allows us to be much more competitive in a global market, and the continuance of bonus depreciation are 2 areas, the tax rate and the bonus depreciation are 2 areas that allow us to grow and add good-paying jobs to our mills in Maine. The 100% bonus depreciation has been a big part of our capital expansion and allowing us and enabling us to do that project where we're going to add a lot of jobs and a lot of economic activity to the state of Maine. One negative of the bonus depreciation is that it will gradually be phased out starting in 2023, it's been so important to our business. We would like to see that continue. Another negative of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act is the elimination of the net operating loss deduction carryback. Our industry is extremely competitive, has incurred losses in nearly as many years as we have turned a profit. So prior to the Jobs Act, the Tax Cut Jobs Act, losses incurred in 1 year could be carried back to affect profits from the prior 2 years and thus recoup some of the taxes paid in the prior 2 years. These losses now must be carried forward to partially reduce taxes to be paid in the future. That's another aspect of that act that we would like to see changed going forward. Besides those 2, the act has been very beneficial to us. And allowed us to grow and expand. Infrastructure is an essential component of the forest products industry operations. we need massive investment in infrastructure. You know, Maine has, our place in Maine has a lot of issues on infrastructure. We need federal support for that. We transport all of our lumber by truck or rail, and it's very difficult. We access a big part of the U.S. housing market, and we have a hard time getting product there because of the crumbling infrastructure. We also need safe, secure, and abundant broadband. We had a ransomware attack last year that cost our company around $100,000 between outside vendors and internal work to fix that issue. You know, so for a company our size, you know, it's not devastating, but for a smaller business, that cost would have been about the same. You know, and that's a big issue going forward. Last thing I'll touch on is labor. You know, labor is one of the biggest issues we're facing. Unemployment in our state is very close to zero effectively because anybody who wants a job can find one right now. You know, we need to train people in the trades. We need to train people to do things and make things. And, you know, we've got a lot of jobs available, good paying jobs, and we need to also allow anyone who is honest and willing to work hard legally into our country to help fill these jobs and fuel our economy. We have the work. So I have no time left. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Brochu. Impressive in 5 minutes. Trade, taxes, infrastructure, broadband, cybersecurity, and labor, education, and immigration. It's not bad. I'm impressed. You know, with that, I'll go ahead and recognize Mr. Scalish for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Congresswoman Valquez, Ranking Member Shabbat, and Congresswoman Christy Houlihan, and members of the House Small Business Committee for the invitation. I'm honored to testify before you today. My name is Bill Scalish. I'm the owner of Granitech Inc. My business, Granitech Inc., referred to as GTI, is a small import business located in the small town of Landenberg, Pennsylvania, and was started in 2005. Our business included the importation of cut-to-fit fabricated granite, marble, and quartz countertops from China to end users throughout the U.S. Our customer base consists of the hospitality industry, including Marriott International, where we're one of 4 endorsed suppliers, Hilton, IHG, Wyndham, multifamily housing, senior living facilities, and student housing across the country. We currently have 7 employees on salary. In April 2018, Cambria filed a petition with the International Trade Commission and the Department of Commerce alleging the import of quartz surface products from China caused Cambria injury. In September 2018, granite and quartz countertops were added to the list 3 of the Section 301 tariffs, and 10% was imposed. My business has been devastated by these tariffs and the Department of Commerce's initial decision on the anti-dumping and countervailing cases in association with the Cambria petition. While the Cambria petition primarily pertains to slabs, we are being tariffed on not only the cost of the materials, but also the labor to fabricate the cut-to-fit countertops. Our customers, including general contractors, developers, hotel owners, hotel franchisees, have also felt these impacts. Numerous hotel projects have been placed on hold and canceled, and some were because they were over budget, not only because of the extremely high proposed tariffs levied as cash deposits on quartz surface products in China, but other materials facing tariffs as well. Furthermore, the current CBD and AD cash deposits proposed duties affect numerous other companies throughout the country with similar business models. GTI collective tariff rate on quartz surface products is currently at 308.05%. Again, 308.05%, which includes Section 301 tariffs. There is no way my company can survive this and could end up owing Customs and Border Patrol in excess of $1.5 million in additional tariffs alone. Additionally, by collecting the anti-dumping and countervailing duties in advance, coupled with the extremely exorbitant percentage, Granitech is unable to operate as our profit margin is nowhere near 300%. In addition, during bond renewal in January, our collateral amount was so high at $200,000, money that Granitech didn't have due to the astronomical deposits we had to pay on the last shipments that were in transit when the AD due rate was published in November. Granitech can no longer import without a customs bond. The impact of this case on us is particularly troubling because GTI currently is in hibernation. Due to the high tariffs, we lost 2 employees out of 7, where only salary were only on salary and received substantial bonuses on GTI sales that are now non-existent. Granite Tech is in hibernation until the next International Trade Commission hearing is scheduled for tomorrow, May 9th, 2019 at 9:30 a.m., and subsequent ruling which should happen in June. I will attend the ITC hearing as an audience member, as GTI can no longer afford legal fees pertaining to this case. It is unclear whether GTI's import bond will be reactivated due to non-payment of cash deposits, regardless of whether they are refunded should the case be dismissed, the percentage is lowered. I'm hopeful that the ITC and DOC will be more realistic in their findings and remedy the percentages in addition to rejecting critical circumstances, which are 90-day retroactive, on both countervailing case, not currently proposed, and anti-dumping case proposed, and cash deposits in collection. It brings me great concern that the current administration already seems to overlook the impact of tariffs on small businesses like mine in Pennsylvania and across the nation. I'd like to thank you for your time and consideration, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Scalish. And finally, Mr. Cordis Mackey, you're recognized for 5 minutes as well.
Well, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come here and speak my part. Hello, I'm Gerry Cordis Mackey. I'm the owner of London Road Rental Center in Duluth, Minnesota, and Superior, Wisconsin. I started my business new. I did not buy an existing business. I started February 1st of 2002. My business has 10 full-time employees and 20 seasonal employees. We have grown from nothing to about a $2 million volume with a $2.5 million inventory in 17 years. The Bush-era tax cuts of 2001 and 2003 had a huge impact on how I depreciate my equipment. I use Section 179 and bonus depreciation every year. This is one of the tax laws that's really working for me and for all small businesses. I've came to D.C. many times and lobbied hard to make this permanent. I've been able to grow my business, my company faster because of it, and also our economy has grown continually because when I buy equipment like excavators and skid steers, it creates a lot of jobs in the U.S. Thousands of other small businesses use it just like I do. I'm kind of addicted to it. I either spend the money or have to pay a lot more taxes because I do not have the depreciation built up to write it off. This has really helped me grow my business faster and continually. The Job Cuts Act of 2017 saved me about $7,200 last year. With health insurance going up another 10% this year and the commercial auto insurance going up 30%, the money was used up fast. We really needed that tax cut to help cover and maintain things. We are an S Corp, so the pass-through tax cut that came through is very important to small businesses like mine. The rising cost of health care and the fact the Affordable Health Care Act took the health insurance away from most of my employees. We used to have a $1,000 deductible, and the employees could afford that. Now that the premiums have doubled and the deductibles went to $6,000, the employees do not have the ability to cover that $6,000 deductible. So basically, they do not use their health care plans. Simply put, the Affordable Care Act has been a disaster for small business. We chase the insurance changes every year, and it's a real hassle to keep up with it. It takes a lot of time and energy trying to do the best for our employees, balancing cost with benefits. I feel I've been successful despite the government, not because of it. Things like the salary employee pay issue a few years ago caused a lot of issues. I had to change my pay structure for my management people because of the threats of fines and such, and then it was defeated or went away. That issue cost me a lot of time and money. The amount of regulation we have to deal with is huge. We have 3 pickup trucks we use for deliveries. Most of our deliveries are within 100 miles, and almost all of them are within 25 miles. We are in 2 states. The businesses are about 8 miles apart. All of our drivers have to be 21 because 18-year-olds can't cross that state line. They can drive 200 miles in either state, but they cannot drive across that imaginary line between the two. Just a point of interest, an 18-year-old can vote and he can go to war, but he cannot drive across a state line. It's insanity at work. There are so many regulations, just the DOT as an example, with driver's records, drug tests, truck inspections daily and annually. It's a huge cost to keep up on and to track. And then there's the trailers. You have to do the same thing to them. We rent a lot of different types of equipment, and there's ANSI standards, OSHA requirements on scaffolds, ladders, lifts. Very few people understand that ladders are almost outlawed now in this country by OSHA. Then there's the new OSHA silica and dust regulations. The reason I bring this up is we just don't need to know them for us. We're supposed to educate our customers about them. the Tier 4 diesel regulations that went into effect for emissions. They're driving up the costs and making it really tough to maintain our trucks and equipment, and very expensive too. Our new diesel trucks are no longer reliable like diesels were known for. They're continually in for repairs, emissions repairs. And in Duluth, we have winter, not Tier 4 friendly at all. The one from Maine probably runs into that same issue. I've lived the American dream. My wife and I have worked hard for many years to get there. We have jumped through hoops and have learned things I thought I'd never know. We collect sales tax for 14 different municipalities, and we collect federal taxes also. We collect child support and court judgments for our employees. My wife works full-time to keep up with the taxes and the human resource training and records for our little business. Keeping up with the changes in HR and the taxes is a job in itself. Something else to think about. Remember, small business is your tax collectors. We do not get paid to do it. We do not get trained to do it, but if we make a mistake, we sure get punished for it. In my time as a business owner, I think I've heard there's 137 different federal agencies making rules for us to follow. Then you have Congress and the courts. We need to simplify this complicated system and stop any non-elected board or agency from passing any rule or law. We elected you to make the decision, not the bureaucrats. If it doesn't have enough support for Congress to pass it, it shouldn't be a law or a rule. I spend a lot of time working to keep these unelected bureaucrats and these agencies happy. This is one of the largest burdens on my small business and all small businesses. They touch every part of what I do every day, and I don't even have enough time to touch on the employee issues and problems that we're currently having. Thank you very much. I'll answer any questions.
Thank you very much, sir. And with that, I'm going to start by recognizing the ranking member, Mr. Stauber, who has a constituent who's going to be carrying out the opening prayers on the House floor. So we're going to let him ask questions first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Gerry, you had, that was well stated. You and I have talked about those unelected, which you refer to as bureaucrats, putting legislation that affects small businesses, and what you and I have talked about and what this committee understands, 99% of our economy is small business. Yep. And we, as a small business owner myself, for 29 years, there's ups and downs, there's struggles, but what we need to do is make sure that when we put legislation forward that we understand the consequences, and it has to be a positive, a net positive for our small businesses. So I've got just two questions, actually three. The first one, you alluded to it in your statement, but did the Tax Cut and Jobs Act have a positive effect on your business?
Yes, it did. A very positive effect.
And what did you say your savings was?
$7,200.
And then the second question is, you've been, what would you say if you had to pick your number one roadblock to be successful in relation to the federal government? What would be the number one roadblock?
God, that's a gigantic thing. I know currently, and it goes back to what we're battling with the employee issues, is this 18 versus 21 on the Department of Transportation rules. And it's a huge hindrance. We have a young gentleman that's 19 years old now. He's been driving trucks in Wisconsin, or he has to start in Minnesota to do it because he can't cross that line. And this young guy can drive a trailer as fast backwards as he can forward after doing this for years. But he can't drive across that crazy line. And finding people.
And that crazy line for the listeners here is the bridge between Duluth, Minnesota, and Superior, Wisconsin.
Yeah, and
the
they're
Blotnick
heavily
and the Bong Bridge.
So that and again, taxes is the other big thing. The amount of money that we spend every year with depreciation, with accountants, and with planning for the tax, and it goes back to the 179 has been great. But I'm addicted to the spending because I have to, or I have to give the money to the government. So that's a choice I make, which granted has been great for the economy. It's been fantastic because every year now I spend more money every year. I project what I'm going to grow. I project how much I spent last year. And, John Deere, Moline, out of Moline, Illinois, they love me. We've got a lot of yellow big steel out there.
And then the last question, Gerry, you commented that you have come out to Washington and testified several times. From your perspective, what can we as a committee work on to make sure that small businesses like yours thrive?
Balancing all these regulations against cost. Every time these regulations come up, there has to be a formula in there to understand the fact that it costs us so much money. And somehow, as they go forward, and all of these other Department of Transportations, OSHA, all these, as they're having their meetings outside of you, again, if there's a way to regulate them to make it that they have to bring stuff to you to get it passed, instead of just them making the rules and making the changes. And, you know, even their ability to tax is totally wrong, because you're my congressman. I elected you to make these decisions and to make these things. I did not elect them. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cordis. Mackey. I can say that, you know, we've been here, you know, several months now as a freshman, and I really appreciate this committee talking about some of the exact same things you had mentioned about the repercussions of legislation, or the repercussions of legislation by unelected folks.
It's rulemaking that really kills us. It's not just legislation, it's rulemaking.
Agreed. And we've talked about that as well. Yeah. So I would just want to, in closing, Gerry, I want to just congratulate you and Kathy on that American dream. You're living it. You're employing people. And I want to say from our perspective of Minnesota's 8th Congressional District, you have been a steward of small business, and you understand it. And of course, your affiliation with the National Federation of Independent Business, they understand small business too, and we appreciate that. So I want to thank.
A couple of seconds left.
Yeah, go ahead.
The thing on the health care issue, what it did to taking it away from my employees, the sad story when my mechanic crashed his ATV and we had the $1,000 deductible, he was able to take care of that in 1 year. With the $6,000 deductible, and this guy makes close to $50,000 a year, he's not super poor, he's not wealthy, that would devastate him. We need to figure out how to fix this health care issue that's just, for small business to offer it has become such a burden, and I don't want to just turn my employees over to government-controlled health care. It's something that I don't see working.
Thank you, Mr. Cordis Mackey, and I appreciate your attendance. Back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to recognize myself for 5 minutes. And I just want to point out really quickly, Mr. Cordis Mackey, that you were talking about the rulemaking aspect of all this, and you elected, your member of Congress to come here and make decisions, and not folks at agencies and departments. And Mr. Stelber and I actually worked together on an instance to fix something just like this. It was the Runway Extension Act that the last Congress passed. Mr. Stelber sponsored the bill to fix the issue, and I am the co-sponsor. And it's the same thing. We've got a agency that's trying to ignore the intent of Congress, and we're here to try and make sure that we're going to hold them to the original intent of the legislation. I also wanted to point out, I'm sure Mr. Stauber is co-sponsoring, as I am, a bill, the trucking issue you talked about with truck drivers under 21. I got you beat in Maine, Fort Kent to Kittery. Truck driver can drive 362 miles under the age of 21, and then to go from Kittery to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, 2.3 miles, they can't do it. So I'm with you on that, as well as a common sense reform. I wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about trade, and I think we have a good opportunity to talk about the importance of having a process and consistency as best we can as a government. I thought, Mr. Brochu, you might, having listened to Mr. Scalish, talk a little bit about the softwood lumber duties and the process behind it, and how it is more of a scalpel rather than a sledgehammer approach to dealing with unfair trade practices with another government.
Is that on? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. For the softwood lumber industry, the trade issue with Canada, the unfair trade issue, goes back to the early 80s. It's been a long process, and there's been periods of duties, there's been periods of agreements, and so the last agreement ran out a few years ago, and at that point, shortly after, there was a 1-year standstill period as part of the agreement, and then the industry triggered another investigation and filed a trade case against Canada. And throughout that process, what we as an industry need is enforcement of the trade laws, and that's what we're asking for. And it's a very long process to get to where we are now, and it's a long process going forward. But there's the investigations have shown an unfair situation that hurts the U.S. industry, and it hurts U.S. jobs and costs U.S. jobs and prevents our industry from growing in adding the jobs and investing in the mills to get us to the size that we should be or could be. So the proof's in the pudding in the lumber anyway, and this is a very long drawn out process, but the lumber industry in the United States is investing like crazy, growing like crazy. We're adding big billions of dollars of investment into mills, into jobs all throughout the country. We're a little part of that up in Maine, and we're happy to do it, and the confidence that we have going forward that we have a level playing field plays into that big time.
And am I correct this is my understanding of it, that the process is so detailed that in the investigations they are actually identifying specific companies who are, carrying out, taking part, or benefiting from some of these unfair trade practices, and there's almost a scale in terms of what people have to pay. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's certain companies that have different rates applied to them, and then there's a general rate, and that's all part of the existing trade laws, how they get to that point. So it's all process, and it started under the Obama administration. This current iteration of it, my first meetings down here on this current case were with Ambassador Froman of USTR under President Obama. So it takes a long time to do this properly and to enforce the U.S. trade laws.
I appreciate you're taking a little bit of time to talk about it, and I'm sure that Mr. Scalish, you're going to have more time to talk about it from a different perspective. But I think what you see here is a long, drawn-out, thoughtful process that is very detailed in going after some specific issues here, and I think it's a good example of how we can enact good trade policies when we see an unfair practice. Real quick, you got about 30 seconds left here, but you talked a little bit about the labor stuff. And anything specific come to mind that you think we could focus on that would help you out?
Oops, is that on? Yeah. We need people, and I know immigration's obviously a big issue, but we don't have enough people to fill the jobs that we have right now, and I think we need to have more of an emphasis as a country on trades, versus the different types of jobs. We're going to have plenty of computer programmers in a few years. We need people to run equipment. We need people to program, there's plenty of computer jobs in our mills as well, but, we need electricians, we need mechanical people, we need millwrights, we need those type of skills that are going to fuel the economy, and that's what we need.
Thank you very much. I couldn't agree more. It's, I think you mentioned like $60,000, $70,000 salary in Jackman, Maine. That's doing real good in rural America. So with that, I am out of time. Nothing to yield back. And next, we will recognize Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions, one for Mr. Scalish, and thank you so much again for coming today and sharing your story with us and our committee. And you, in your testimony, you spoke about Cambria, which is the leading producer of quartz surface product in our country, and them petitioning the Department of Commerce and International Trade Commission and alleging that the imported quartz surface products that were coming in from China were causing injury to Cambria. Can you talk a little bit more about the Department of Commerce and International Trade Commission's response to that, and possibly ways that we can be helpful to alleviate the unintended consequences and the problem that you're experiencing?
Yeah. Well, number one, I'm not sure Cambria is, in fact, the leading domestic manufacturer of quartz surface products in the U.S. The Trade Commission, or the ITC, and then the final decision by the Department of Commerce, made three rulings, or actually two rulings. On September 21st, after the hearing, they initiated a countervailing duty of 34.38% and did not find critical circumstances, which means that they will not go back 90 days retroactive. On September 24th, 2018, granite and quartz were placed on the list 3 of the Section 301 tariffs at 10% currently, possibly 25% here in the very near future. On November 20th, 2018, the Department of Commerce published an industry-wide anti-dumping cash deposit duty rate of 290%. So, and they did find critical circumstances, which go back 90 days retroactive. What happens is that we were under contract with our customers. When they went retroactive, we had shipments already on the water that landed the same day or days after the retroactive duty period. So we're being tariffed on those duties. Currently, we've paid over $1 million in tariffs. with a proposed 1.5 million in additional tariffs when they start to go after the anti-dumping 90-day retroactive tariff. So our company's devastated. I mean, we have, we're basically done because of those tariffs.
And is there anything that you can think of in terms of reversing the retroactiveness of it that would be helpful so that we can be thoughtful
Absolutely.
about this? Surgical rather than sledgehammer.
Yeah, exactly. Sledges versus, eliminating the retroactive tariff, finding critical circumstances on the anti-dumping would be extremely helpful. That would reduce my liability from that 1.5 million and or more to go away, which would be very beneficial. Again, we already paid $1 million up. We had contracts with customers, and they are not willing to go back and say, okay, we've been tariffed now. We'd like to add those tariffs to the invoice. Well, they come back and say, well, we have a contract due. The contract is for $50,000. We're not paying any more money for tariffs. So who has to absorb it? We do.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done.
Thank you. I understand, and thank you very much for your compelling testimony. With the remainder of my time, I'd love to ask Mr. Brochu a question regarding your testimony that had to do with cybersecurity and the fact that you were kind of hijacked in a way. I'd love to understand a little bit more about the story of the hack, and also if you could speak more in depth. Were you prepared? Did you know that you were vulnerable? Did you have any assistance? And what can we do to help small businesses like you to be less vulnerable to cyber attack and to be more able to withstand them once they happen?
Yes, thank you for the question. Our particular instance, it was a ransomware attack, and it locked up a lot of data, and we recovered what we could, had to rebuild everything, and it all started with somebody opening an attachment. It was a very innocent thing. It was disguised to look just like an internal email. So it's so sophisticated now and so complex that it's becoming a major expense to our business, and we through that process exposed some gaps that we had in security that we spent a lot of money now to fix. So it's becoming one of those costs of doing business that you don't talk a lot about, but it's becoming very significant. So what can the government do to help? I think whatever emphasis needs to be put on this, from a research level and all the way down to an implementation of, I think the security issues that the government faces are the same as what we're facing now, and it is unaddressed. It's going to be a competitive disadvantage to businesses going forward. And I think, the role the government can play in that is to work on it on a level where it does not become a competitive disadvantage to us.
And you should, thank you very much, and you should know that this committee passed through 3 different bills last week that went to the floor last week and have now passed the House that have to do with cybersecurity in the small business space, and now obviously the challenge is to get it through the Senate as well. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for your time, and I yield back.
Thank you.
Well, with that, I want to thank everyone for coming and providing some very compelling testimony about your businesses. I want to say congratulations to all of you on the work that you do and jobs that you create in your communities. And the breadth of the conversation is impressive, and I think it gives you a sense of everything that we deal with in this committee. So thank you for sharing your thoughts, and we'll be using that as best we can to help you moving forward in this committee. With that, we're going to shut down this panel and move on to a third. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Good luck to you on that. Wow, 308%.
Good to see you. Just gonna take a picture of you if you don't mind.
Perfect. I'm glad I wore the right shoes there. That's right.
You good? Don't get nervous. But you'll be
Oh, stop. Where'd you get all that sun? Sun? You can tell? The sunshine.
Here, look right here. It's really cool y'all are up here.
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
How are you?
How you doing?
Good.
Good luck.
Thank you.
I'm sure it'll be. We'll just drill y'all's questions.
Oh, great.
Oh, you won't. But just don't get nervous. You're only speaking to like 20 million people. No.
You're great at this.
Yeah. I have a kid rocks. This is yeah.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
I'm Britni.
I'm Dave. Nice to meet you.
Colleen.
Hi, Colleen. I'm Dave.
So, what kind of business do you have?
I have a farm. Yeah, I saw that. Grain and livestock. So be
This hearing will come to order, and I'd like to first just welcome our witnesses today on our final panel, and I'll take a minute to introduce each one of you as well, but before that, I'm going to first yield to Congressman Crow, who's going to actually introduce his witness and ask the appropriate questions as well. So thank you all again so much, and I yield now to Congressman Crow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you yield to me, and going a little bit out of order here this morning. It's nice to be with all of you today and to welcome you and to listen to just a few of the nation's small business heroes' stories. It's an honor to introduce a small business hero from Colorado's 6th Congressional District, which I represent. Britni Ray Reese is the co-founder of Fit and New, Colorado's first fitness and nutrition club for women of color, and proudly located in Aurora, Colorado. Britni has a strong entrepreneurial spirit, which has weaved itself through everything she has done in her 32 years. She has accomplished a lot in her professional life, but what inspires me is the saying she lives by: if you lead with good and purposeful intent, then great things will come out, which I wholeheartedly agree. Britni started her college career at Colorado State University studying apparel design and construction, and was very active in the Black Student Alliance. She began to learn about business by studying at the Art Institute of Colorado and by creating an event production and design company called Chocolate Piece Productions at the age of 21. She then relocated to Los Angeles to continue her studies at the Art Institute of LA while working as a publicist assistant for a number of Hollywood influences and lifestyle brands. She kept pushing herself to grow, which led her to move across the country to Brooklyn, New York, and it was there that she found her love for fitness. While living in New York, she began to train and learn more about fitness, continued to build her passion to inspire others, and eventually took her to Central America. It was upon her return where she and her sister Jocelyn decided to dedicate their life's work to help women of color reach their optimal fitness and wellness through Fit and New, their habit-based fitness and nutrition company. And I am so glad that they decided to launch and run this business in their hometown of Aurora. Since launching in 2015, Britni has worked to touch hundreds of women's lives in her hometown and even more online. She has led women to achieve physical wellness, but also goes further to work on self-actualization, esteem, love, belonging, safety, and security. I am proud to have Britni Reese representing my district as a small business hero, and I know she will achieve a great amount of success through her good and purposeful living. Now I will do something that I never do, and I have to apologize and excuse myself from this hearing. As many of you know, my district had our third mass shooting just yesterday with a mass shooting at a school in the southwest part of my district. So I'm going to leave now and head to the airport to be with the families during this time. So I apologize for having to excuse myself, but I welcome you again, and I thank you for your leadership. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Crow. I appreciate your time today and thinking of you and wishing you well on your journeys and thinking of your district. Thank you. Now it is my pleasure to welcome our next witness here as well from my home state of Iowa, Mr. Dave Walton, a local farmer and an executive director on the board of directors at the Iowa Soybean Association. Happy to have you here. And Dave actually farms with his wife and his 2 sons. And in addition to growing soybeans and corn, he also raises beef, cattle, and sheep, and owns a small seed company in their hometown, as well as a new trucking company that they started up with their 2 sons to make sure that there was opportunities for his sons to come back to the farm when right now folks all across Iowa know that things are tough right now in rural Iowa, given the ongoing trade war and retaliatory tariffs. And, but there's plenty to do. And I know, Mr. Walton, you give me hope every day. It's folks like you that I go back to Iowa and chat with that again, always give me hope even when things are tough. And I'm just very grateful for you to be here today and to tell your story. So thank you very much, Mr. Walton. And I'd now like to yield as well to Mr. Burchett for Tennessee to introduce our next witness.
Thank you, Chair Lady, and thank you for this opportunity to be here. I guess I should have said Madam Chair would have been more appropriate. I'm just in Tennessee. That's what we always used to say in the legislature, so I apologize, Madam Chair. I'm honored here today to talk to you about a small business that's in East Tennessee. Tennessee is a proud small business state. 99% of the businesses in my state are considered small businesses. These are job creators who employ more than half of Tennessee. These are the people who put their blood, sweat, and tears into their passions, and I want to get the government off their backs like a lot of y'all do. I ran a couple of small businesses myself, and I understand what it takes in that community. My guest at the committee today is no different. Colleen Cruz Bati. Did I get that right, Colleen? Pretty close? All right. Owner of Cruz Farm in Knoxville, Tennessee, is a fixture in our community. Cruz Farm is a family dairy farm in East Tennessee. Colleen and her staff, they actually milk Jersey cows and bottle their own whole pasteurized Jersey milk, which I guess I should say for the record, there's a couple of gallons of it, of the whole variety and the chocolate in my refrigerator, and I would say there's a couple of tubs of their ice cream, but usually when it hits by the time it never gets to the freezer. Usually when my wife gets it out of the bag, it's already getting eaten by myself or my daughter Isabel or my wife. They also they have their mom and pop grocery store. They have their milk in the mom and pop grocery stores and the food cooperatives throughout East Tennessee. And most importantly, though, Cruz Farm has some of the best ice cream you'll ever have, which I noted. I was out there eating, and they also sell pizza, if you can believe that, with I guess the cheese that they make themselves. I was out there one Sunday after church with my wife and daughter, and there was another guy there, and he was telling me their marketing skills. He said, and the trendy word that I guess you young folks use a lot is branding, and their branding is excellent. And he said to me, Burchett, he said, this is like being at the early days of Chick-fil-A, and I thought that was some pretty high standards. I don't want y'all to take all this from me, but I want you to know I'm very happy to introduce my good friend Colleen for y'all to hear her story. Colleen, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Burchett. Finally, I'd like to yield to my colleague from Pennsylvania, who also sits as the ranking member of, I think, the best subcommittee, right, of rural development, agriculture, trade, and entrepreneurship, along with myself. And Dr. Joyce, I'd be happy to have you introduce our last witness here.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you very much. And you're right, this is the best subcommittee. Today, I welcome Mr. Shawn Pollard, the CEO of LB Water Services of Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Mr. Pollard is in his 4th year as the CEO of LB Water Service. LB Water has been providing quality water and wastewater solutions for decades. And over that time, LB Water Services has grown from 1 sales office in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, to 8 full-service locations covering Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. Their large inventory and proprietary fleet of delivery vehicles ensures that LB Water Services can supply the products, the services, and support that their customers need the most. Shawn has lived in various places throughout the United States in his career, but he considers Elmira, New York to be his home. He's a graduate of PMC Widener University, where he received his degree in business administration. Shawn is the proud father of 3 grown children, hopefully one watching as it streams live. In his spare time, Shawn enjoys being with his family and friends, playing golf, watching baseball, and most important for this subcommittee, being the CEO of LB Water Services. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. And now I want to just take a minute to explain how the timing rules work here. Each witness will get 5 minutes to testify, and then members get 5 minutes to ask questions. There's a lighting system that you'll see right in front of you to assist you. The green light comes on when you begin, and then the yellow light means there's just 1 minute remaining. The red light then comes on when you're out of time, and we ask that you stay within the time frame to the best of your ability. So thank you guys again for all being here today, and can't wait to hear from you all. And with that, we'll start with Mr. Walton, who we'd like to recognize for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Ms. Chairwoman and members of the committee. I'm honored to address you here today. Thank you for inviting me to speak as we recognize the positive impact of entrepreneurs and small business owners. It's truly an honor to speak on behalf of millions of hardworking farm families who are an important segment of the small businesses of America. Once upon a time, the thought of testifying before the U.S. House of Representatives would have struck fear into my heart. Turns out, it's a walk in the park compared to farming and operating a business that sustains my family and provides employment and economic opportunity for Iowa, a state built on agriculture. For more than 100 years, the Walton family has farmed the land I call home near Wilton, Iowa. But in 1835, we were the first European settlers to establish a farm, plant, and harvest a crop in the area now known as Cedar County. But that's not where our story begins. Centuries ago, after a dispute with the King of England, my ancestors were given a choice. They left England and arrived in the colonies during the early 1600s, settling on Staten Island first, and then began their migration to Iowa, first to Long Island, New Jersey, Ohio, Indiana, before setting down roots in Iowa. I come before you today as an eastern Iowa farmer who has a passion for providing food, fiber, and fuel for a growing and more demanding world population. My wife Paula, sons Brad, Alex, and I grow soybeans, corn, raise beef, cattle, and sheep, and operate a seed company in our hometown of Wilton. Recently, we established a trucking company to transport sand, gravel, and fertilizer to help provide additional revenue and an opportunity for our sons to join the operation as partners. For the past year, farm families like mine haven't been in a celebratory mood. Regardless of running a diversified enterprise, managing cash flow responsibly, and doing the things the right way for the right reasons, I can tell you firsthand these are difficult times, perhaps the most difficult I've faced as a farmer. This may come as a surprise given the nation's historically low unemployment and solid gains in most financial indices, but make no mistake, farmers, the communities in which they live, and the businesses they patronize are hurting. Soybean prices, a major source of revenue for my operation, are at 10-year lows, down almost $2 per bushel from this time last year. While I'd like to say all is well in rural America, it's not. There's no one reason why prices that farmers are receiving for their products are well below the cost of production. Rather, it's a multitude of challenges, some placed on us by government's action or inaction, and some by our own making. Combined, inaction on these critical issues are creating a kind of financial headwinds like the likes of which we haven't seen since the 1980s. If action isn't taken immediately by Congress and the administration, the crops some farmers are currently planting may be their last. While America's farmers are astute at producing, what we need are markets. Many of you gathered here today understand the direct correlation between action you take and the livelihoods of those who farm and operate small businesses. When access to markets is blocked, farm prices fall. Conversely, when prices react positively when demand increases, and I can think of few better examples of that demand increase than promoting and enhancing consumption of homegrown renewable fuels like biodiesel. I want to recognize Congresswoman Finkenauer for leading a bipartisan effort in the House to retroactively extend the biodiesel tax credit. This action helps shine a light on the need for boosting prices and demand. This issue resonates with her as Iowa is the #1 biodiesel producing state, producing nearly 365 million gallons last year, supporting nearly 4,700 full-time jobs in Iowa, and given most renewable fuel production facilities are in rural communities, the biodiesel tax credit and renewable fuels industry are major boosts to communities often most in need of good-paying blue-collar jobs and economic vitality. For our farm, biodiesel production adds 63 cents to the market value of every bushel of soybeans, or about 40 cents or $40 an acre, by generating greater demand for the oil found in each soybean. That's an additional $40 an acre across my farm that would enable us to reinvest an extra $12,000 this year into an operation to update machinery like a 20-year-old tractor that's wearing out, or invest in technology to continue to improve our efficiency. Biodiesel not only diversifies our fuel supply so we're less dependent on foreign oil, it saves every U.S. consumer at least 17 cents on every gallon of diesel. It improves the environmental quality by reducing greenhouse gas emissions by up to 86%. In a climate where everyone is looking for a win, this is a win-win-win. It lowers the cost of food and fuel and improves the air we all breathe. This should be a slam dunk. Continued inaction on this topic is unacceptable. If Congress doesn't extend the biodiesel and renewable diesel tax incentive, small businesses like mine and the biodiesel producers in our small towns will continue to suffer. The same can be said for trade. Continued disputes and disruptions with our trading partners have created tremendous financial strain for America's farmers and small businesses. China is America's #1 market for soybean exports. Nearly one out of every 3 rows of soybeans grown in the U.S. is exported to a country of 1.4 billion people. That's no longer true today. As a result, the downward pressure on soybean prices has been dramatic since the U.S. and China have been embroiled in an escalating trade war almost 1 year ago. China's retaliatory duties primarily targeted agricultural products, including an extra 25% tax on U.S. soybeans. Any trade war involving food hits states like Iowa and small businesses like mine particularly hard, adding to the complexity and pessimism that no one knows when the anxiety and pain will ease. This makes planning for the future nearly impossible. Until the trade issues are resolved, we're stuck in limbo, unable to move forward with any clear direction. I can tell you this is not an enviable position for any business owner. We thrive when the future is clear and barriers are removed. It's my sincere hope that these issues will be resolved quickly so many more generations of Waltons can continue this 400-year journey of farming in this great country. I look forward to continuing the conversation and stand ready to assist you and your colleagues in crafting solutions and moving this issue across the finish line. Thank you again for allowing me to share my story on behalf of Iowa's soybean farmers. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Walton, and again, just very grateful to have you here today and making sure Iowans are heard here in Washington. Next, I'd like to recognize Ms. Reese for 5 minutes to hear her testimony as well.
Chairwoman and members of Small Business Committee, thank you for hosting this hearing to honor small business heroes and for inviting me to speak today. I would also like to thank my representative, Congressman Jason Crow, for giving Fit and New the opportunity to speak here about the work we are doing as small business owners in his district. My name is Britni Ray Reese, co-founder of Fit and New, Colorado's first fitness and nutrition company for busy women of color, located in Colorado's 6th Congressional District in the city of Aurora. My sister and I started Fit and New in 2015 with the mission to help busy women of color improve their health, ease their minds, and influence their communities and families to live well. We do this through functional fitness training and habit-based nutrition coaching. When asked why we were selected as a small business hero, we were told because we take advantage of our resources, we work hard and bring passion. My sister and I work well together and maintain a family relationship that extends to the women we serve. Fit and New celebrated its official grand opening as a fully staffed and equipped boutique fitness and nutrition club in March of 2019, not only positively impacting health and wellness for women in the community we grew up in, but employing, collaborating, and contracting with other small businesses and entrepreneurs as well. Hard work and determination alone did not get us here. The success my sister and I have enjoyed so far is due largely to the support of local nonprofits like the Women's Business Center at Mikasa Resource Center and Community Enterprise Development, also known as CEDS. These are 2 Colorado organizations that equip women and minority business owners in our pursuit of impact, longevity, and profitability. I highlight these organizations because of the work they do to propel low-income entrepreneurs like myself through glass ceilings out of cycles of poverty and beyond gender wage gaps. Between 2014 and 2018, Mikasa created 721 jobs, launched 35 new businesses, and hosted countless workshops on topics ranging from finance and HR to strategic planning and social media marketing. CEDS has financed 213 businesses and placed a total of $4.05 million in investments with the help of the Small Business Administration. So when I think of what Congress can do to help small businesses, it would be to continue programs in the Small Business Administration that fund organizations like Mikasa and CEDS that support disadvantaged businesses, such as minority-owned and women-owned businesses. This will afford us to grow beyond the uphill battle as startups and give us the resources to hire team members, implement marketing campaigns beyond grassroots efforts, and to become more sound business operators and owners. Also, as Congress passes legislation that allocates capital funding in support of small businesses, the focus should be on helping businesses develop and sustain internal operations. As low-income business owners, we are our main human resource. We would like to help ourselves and other disinvested people and communities join the economic mainstream. Wage subsidy programs and debt relief are amongst those of interest to us. Furthermore, if women business centers and community development financial institutions did not exist, we, the disadvantaged Black women visionaries, low-income entrepreneurs, change agents of global health, refugees, and minorities would not have access to low-cost developmental services and capital to growth. In closing, we are thankful for the contributions Congress has made thus far to bridge the gap between social and economic gap for women like me. However, many of the available resources are still directed at larger companies, yet businesses that are small to the federal government need these partnerships with organizations that see them as large. I hope my testimony affirms that women and minority-focused organizations do make a difference and that they are the lifeline to making the American dream work. Thank you again for the opportunity to share our story on behalf of all women-owned and minority-owned businesses.
Thank you so much, Ms. Reese, and again, grateful to have you here today. I'd now like to recognize Ms. Bhatti for 5 minutes for her testimony as well.
Thank you all, and thank you, Mr. Burchett. I met Mr. Burchett about 6 years ago, I would say. I was scooping ice cream at a farmer's market, and I don't know if you remember this, but he was teasing me about how expensive my ice cream was. And I said, you remember what I said?
My wife will pay for it?
No, I said, Mr. Burchett, if you had to milk the cows, you would charge twice as much. I'm happy to say I haven't gone down in prices or quality, and 6 years later, we are selling more ice cream than I could have ever dreamed of. And that is due to our community in Knoxville, Tennessee has completely supported our business, and because of them, we are really thriving. I'm here today with my husband, Manjeet Bhatti. He is a first-generation American. His parents are from India, and I met him actually trying to sell milk at a restaurant. He was cooking. He was about to go to law school. I talked him out of law school, and now he's a full-time dairy farmer with me. We're living the dream together and making good quality milk in Tennessee. So I'm here today to tell you about who my small business heroes are, and that's my parents. They started the farm in 1980. They got married. My dad was 38. My mom was 29. They met ice skating. They married 3 months later, and my dad told my mom, I have this dream. I want to bottle milk. And he's a fourth-generation dairy farmer. But, everyone in the family sold milk, but they never learned how to put it in a bottle and sell it directly to a customer. And my dad was determined to figure out how to do that. But he couldn't have done it without my mom. My mom is the brains. She is so smart, and she supported him completely. And within 1 year, they were bottling milk, pasteurizing and bottling milk. They got their permit, and they wouldn't have got the permit if it wasn't for my mom. And they started selling milk directly to customers. So I went off to college, not totally sure I would come back to the farm, but I really did miss the farm. And I really just appreciated what my parents had built and how much work and love they put into that dairy farm. I don't know if you know much about dairy farms, but it's a completely different culture. The cows come first before anything in life. So on Sunday mornings, instead of church, we're milking cows together. It's a unique culture, and I'm really happy to carry that on. So my mom encouraged me after college to come back to the farm. And I came back, and my goal was to sell the milk surplus that the farm had. We had quite a bit of extra milk that we were not selling, and I also wanted to make ice cream. So the way I started selling it was giving it away. If you can't sell something, you give it away and you make customers. Oh my goodness. And that is how I really built the business, was by giving milk away and meeting our community. And that was
I was kind of like a politician in a way, really, just out there giving milk away and trying to tell everyone about what we were doing at our farm.
Except we give other people's stuff away, not our own.
And I started marketing the farm through social media, which has been really successful for us. We use Instagram and Facebook, and it's free. And we meet our customers just through social media. And in 9 years, the business has really grown. We have 3 storefronts and about 70 employees. And what really motivates me to run a great business are the people. I love people, and I love my employees. And I don't offer health insurance yet, but that is a goal. And as a small business owner, I realize the responsibility I have in employing America's future, and I take it seriously. Employment is much more than merely providing a service in exchange for an hourly rate. I believe that small business owners in America have a unique opportunity to help define what employment can be in this century. And I believe that a job has to be something that one takes pride in. It can be fulfilling. It must be nourishing, not draining. And it has to facilitate physical and mental health. It must provide a forum for community and friendship. And because at the end of the day, we Americans, we spend all our time at work. So at Cruz Farm, our motto is to work hard and to love harder. And through my business, I am building the America that I dream of. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Miss Bhatti, and I wish you would have brought some of the ice cream with you. Oh my goodness.
She did. It was already eaten, ma'am. I'm sorry. I confiscated it's in the office.
Thanks for not sharing. No, but thank you again. And now I'd like to recognize Mr. Pulford for 5 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairwoman. And I'd like to recognize the other distinguished members of the House of Representatives Committee on Small Business, and specifically Congressman Joyce for inviting us today. I am honored to testify before the committee in recognition of National Small Business Week, representing one of our nation's small business heroes, LB Water Service, Inc. My name is Shawn Pulford, and I am the CEO of LB Water. Our company was born in 1970 when our founder, Lehman B. Mengel, capitalized on a market need for readily needed infrastructure materials in central and south central region of Pennsylvania. In a time span of nearly 50 years, we have grown from 3 employees in 1 location to 225 employees in 8 locations. LB Water is now the leading provider of innovative solutions for water, wastewater, and stormwater throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. We serve cities, counties, municipalities, contractors, engineering firms, and development companies. And many of our manufacturers, as well as our customers, are also small, successful businesses. We also now operate 2 affiliated companies, Stormwater Solutions Source and 540 Technologies. Stormwater Solutions Source provides stormwater and environmental solutions that help state and local governments, contractors, and companies meet increasing regulations governing the management of stormwater and erosion and sediment control. 540 Technologies serves an expanded region of 21 states, offering smart city solutions for water loss management, street lighting, electric metering, data acquisition and management to both public and private entities. In 2002, LB Water's owners sold the company's assets to employees, and LB Water has operated as a 100% employee stock ownership plan, ESOP company, ever since. Our company is one of more than 6,600 ESOPs in the United States that combined employ 14.3 million workers. It is because of the provisions for ESOPs in the Employment Retirement Income Security Act of 1974, or ERISA, that LB Water has been able to attract and retain high-caliber workforce, invest in top-notch training and equipment, and provide exceptional benefits to our employee owners. In addition, LB Water's status as an ESOP has provided the foundation for our company's success and future success. I'm pleased to say that LB has experienced a tremendous growth in the last 5 years. This is due in part to increases in both public and private investment. We are benefiting from relief provided by the federal tax cuts as well. As we consider the South Central region of Pennsylvania, which includes Congressman Joyce's district, as well as our Chambersburg location, we can see economic development at work. The region is becoming home to manufacturing and distribution operations for many companies. We have witnessed the construction of 15 new warehouses, each exceeding 1 million square feet along the I-81 corridor from the Maryland line to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We and other businesses in this region have experienced a positive residual economic impact due to this increased activity. However, the area is quickly reaching full employment, the need for skilled labor is high, and concerns are mounting regarding the ability of I-81 to handle the increased traffic demands in the corridor. At LB Water and our affiliated companies, most of our solutions are designed to address our nation's aging subsurface water infrastructure, much of which is well over 100 years old and in dire need of replacement. This critical infrastructure remains out of sight and out of mind until a major failure occurs. Using advanced detection technology, we can see, hear, and pinpoint even small water leaks and provide solutions before they become big events that appear on the nightly news. Yet repairs alone cannot solve the state of our country's deteriorating water infrastructure. Much of it needs to be replaced. For more than 2 years, Congress has discussed the need for comprehensive infrastructure legislation to address the country's transportation and subsurface water infrastructures, both which are essential for economic development as quality of life. As LB Water and other small businesses look ahead to future opportunities and growth, it is clear this is a critical matter upon which federal government could act. We strongly urge Congress to pass a comprehensive infrastructure bill that funds the needed improvements to our crumbling water distribution system, along with our nation's highways, bridges, and airports. I would like to conclude my testimony by saying that it has been a tremendous honor for me to appear before this committee today and tell you our story and speak to some of the issues that impact the day-to-day operations of LB Water. We truly believe we are an American success story. I'm proud of our 100% employee-owned company, what we've accomplished, and how we are positioning ourselves to continue to succeed in the future. This has been a great opportunity. I thank you very much, and I'll be glad to answer any of your questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pulford, and thank you again to all of our witnesses here and all that you've shared with us, and excited to get to learn more as we ask our questions up here. And to begin, I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes and start with Mr. Walton. Again, thank you for being here. I know some folks are probably wondering why I keep bringing farmers from Iowa to testify in front of the Small Business Committee, but I like every opportunity I can to remind Washington that our farmers are also our small business owners. And again, thank you so much for being here. You know, we've gotten to chat over the last few days about quite a bit that's impacting our state right now. Obviously, the uncertainty with the trade war that continues to go on is one of the things that I'm very concerned about, as are all of our friends back in Iowa. And one of the things we can be doing here in Washington is try to help out our farmers as much as we can here with certain things like the biodiesel tax credit extender. And wondering, I know you touched on this in your testimony a bit, but if you can explain more about what this would mean, getting this thing done that was, you know, let expire 16 months ago in the last Congress, and how desperately we need to get this done, and what that means for your family farm and your businesses, but also, as we've talked about earlier, what that means for the communities surrounding you and the small businesses on Main Street that rely on our farmers doing well for them to do well. And if you'd be able to kind of elaborate on some of that and just how important it is that we do everything we can right now to support you guys and again, do everything that we can for our state to be able to grow here.
Sure, and thanks for the question, because this is one that has been kind of a struggle for us. And you know, the biodiesel tax credit extension is one that the producers are looking for. They have to go throughout the year not knowing whether or not they're going to get a retroactive tax credit for the gallons that they produce. So they have to make a decision: do we price it in or do we not price it in? And a lot of them are pricing it in, thinking that it's coming because it had been retroactively put in place. 16 months ago, that stopped happening. So those producers are throttling down production. They are, in some cases, just shutting down operations. And the effect of that is that they're no longer creating demand for the soybean oil that we produce. And a soybean, you basically have two things once that soybean is processed. You have meal, which is used for feed purposes, and then you have oil that can be used for a number of things, one of which is the production of fuel. When we lose demand for oil, that affects also the price of the meal because now oil becomes a waste product that either has to be disposed of or has no value, and that raises the price of meal. So when you raise the price of meal, that costs more to feed to an animal, whether it be a pig or a chicken or a dairy cow, and raises the cost of production for those livestock farmers, which in turn raises the cost of food. But what it means for the grain farmer is that we could potentially lose that 63 cents a bushel of value that the oil adds to the soybeans. And if I'm not profitable, like I said, it's about $40 an acre for us, and for this year, that's the difference between profit and loss. So if I'm not making a profit, I have no money to spend. We have already looked at every single expense in our operation, and we've cut out everything critical, and most of those are personal expenses. We're not buying new vehicles. We're not spending money on clothes. The grocery bill has been pared back as much as we can. So we're making all those kinds of cuts, and those are dollars that are not being spent in the community. It's not at the restaurant. It's not at the clothing store. It's not at the supermarket. And in small-town America, they rely on those dollars even more critically than they probably do in urban areas because they have a smaller customer base. So it has a really wide-reaching effect when ag isn't doing well. And it probably is amplified in those small businesses and small towns across Iowa and the Midwest. So that's the thing that we're working with here is if the profitability of soybeans or any commodity goes away for us, it has that effect that we don't have dollars to spend in the community. We don't have dollars to spend at the equipment dealership to upgrade equipment, and that in turn goes to the manufacturer, and they can't pay their workers or shutting down. And I know right now, Deere has throttled back operations on the ag sector, and that's a direct result from the profitability loss in ag. So it's a pretty direct correlation.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Mr. Walton, uplifting these issues, and we'll keep doing the best we can here in Washington to make sure that Iowans are heard loud and clear, and just the effects of everything that is going on here and how they're hitting our state pretty hard. So thank you, Mr. Walton. And I know my time has expired, and so would like to recognize Mr. Burchett for 5 minutes to ask his questions as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I had several questions. Mr. Walton, I only have 5 minutes. Mr. Walton, you said that the soybean, the biodiesel, I believe is what you said, there was a cost savings associated with that. For you all, or is that cost savings there if we don't provide the cash incentives to it? Is it profitable to y'all?
That's kind of hard to say where I sit because the biodiesel industry is what creates that value for us, and so when we have a functioning biodiesel industry, that profitability is there. The biodiesel industry goes away, I think we have to default back to where it was before we had a robust biodiesel industry and adding that 63 cents. It may be somewhere between 0 and 63. I don't know where that is.
Okay.
So that cost savings would be borne on the meal side, so it would raise the cost of meal.
All right.
So it's hard to say, but I would say that it would be definitely between 63 and 0, but where that number is, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Reese, your story is very compelling, and I dig it. What hurdles do you experience as a woman of color in a very specialized business, it seems? It seems that is I don't know the makeup of Colorado, but when you say we're going to target women of color just in a specific industry, and I'm curious, what hurdles have you experienced, and are there other folks, maybe local chambers of commerce or what have you, that would actually get with you, other ladies that have been in similar situations, say, here's where we're at, here's what can happen to you?
Absolutely. We've managed to partner with a number of organizations in Colorado and currently working with a more national organization that's located here in D.C., the Black Women's Health Imperative, to help span our reach. And just overall, obviously in Colorado, the population of women of color is lower. We happen to be located in the city with the most populated African American women. So we're pretty strategic about that because we know that this is important, even though we are not the majority in our city. However, we're looking at it from a national stance, starting with where we're from and then hoping to expand. Some of the biggest challenges, I would say, is really identifying where we can create these strategic partnerships that will help our bottom line of saving and serving the most women of color in Colorado. So we're working diligently with that, and I think that as we get our name out there a little bit more, Colorado is becoming a big hub for people to, for transplants. So
Right.
I think that we could start to ride that wave a little bit more once our name gets bigger.
Cool. My brother lived there, and my nephew was born there, so.
Oh, there you go.
But he's back home now.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Bhatti, finally, it's a family-owned business, and I know that in family-owned businesses, especially in the dairy business, I remember Paul Harvey, the old radio guy, said one time, he said he read this letter from a guy who sent to his dad, and he was going to boot camp in the military, and he said, we're up every morning at 5:30, and we work all day, and then we're in bed by 7. And he said, if I'd known it was going to be like this, I would have left the dairy farm years ago and joined the Army. And I'm wondering, with family, and I know your family and your husband's here and your boys, and where it's legal, are there any incentives to bring family in to the business to continue it on? We always talk about this, and we'd like to hand the businesses off to the family, but it just seems it's just the big boys. We'll cut a deal for the big boys, but the locally owned folks like you four, nobody's up here beating the drum for y'all.
Well,
it might just be a no.
I guess in our situation, I think we're doing all right. I don't know if you know, but my dad put a conservation easement on the farm.
Sure.
So it's going to stay a farm, whoever along the way wants to farm it. Maybe not the next generation, maybe the next one. But I mean, in our situation, I think we're going to stay a farm forever. Maybe.
Good.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always worried with farming. Everybody pushes farming, but then if I'm stepping on toes here, I really don't care. It becomes the Walmart model. They bring in gasoline and they sell it cheaper than everybody else can.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we've replaced all these hardworking mechanics and with minimum wage hour greeters. And they drive everybody out of business, and then they jack the prices up after they get it. And I see that in the dairy industry a lot, and that concerns me.
My dad's 76, and he's pretty wise, and he really believes people are going to come back to quality and smaller businesses because smaller businesses are able to provide higher quality. And so if he's right, then we're headed that direction.
I've never had anything bad from them. It's sinfully good, and I meant when I said about it being in my freezer, it never makes it to the freezer. So it always gets eaten up. But thank you, and thank your husband for coming in and getting away from your boys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to recognize Congressman Schneider now for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and I want to thank the committee for hosting this hearing on celebrating our small business heroes. I want to thank our panel for joining us today and sharing your experiences, your perspectives. This is the third of 4 people panels. We've had 12 companies here sharing their stories and just touching a little bit on what drives our economy, what makes the American economy so strong, which is small business. 99% of our business entities are small businesses. 2/3 of all new jobs created in this country are created by companies like you. And I think it really is a testament that you're here. I talk in this committee a lot about the 4 things businesses need. You need a business model. Each of you have defined your model. We can't really help you with that. You need access to good talent and making sure we have a trained workforce, people who can do the work, bring the creativity, the ideas, the American work ethic that drives our economy. You need access to capital, and I'm sure all of you and the folks who've been before talked about needing to get to that capital. And ultimately, we need a stable business environment, and all of us can work to provide that. Our role here, I think, in Congress is trying to clear away obstacles and give some stability, because if we don't, it's harder for you to make the decisions you need to make in your investments. And we see that business is hard. 2/3 of small businesses make it to their 2nd year. Only half make it to their 5th year, and only 1/3 make it to the 10th year. And there's lots of reasons for that, but business is hard. But the flip side is small business people are the most optimistic business people we have in our country. They are the entrepreneurs. They're the ones who have faith in the future, because if you didn't have faith in that future, you weren't going to make the investment to do this. So again, I just want to celebrate what you all do, the fact that these are some of our small business heroes that drive our economy, and thank you again for being here. One of the things that concerns me is that, especially on startups, if you look at just the numbers, 25% of business startups are women, and that may be somewhat overstating it. Ms. Reese, you started your business a couple years ago. I know the area well. I actually grew up in Colorado. I grew up 3 miles from your business off Monaco and Hampton. So it's close to home, and I know what you're trying to do. It's a great story. But from your perspective, what incentives, support systems are in place that helped you get off the ground? What more could government do? What could we be doing to make it easier for folks like you to make that decision, to turn that optimism into opportunity?
Thank you for the question. We really found a lot of value in the women's business centers, more specifically Mikasa Resource Center. We first sought them out when this was just an idea and we needed some guidance, and we have been with them ever since. And this is something that I advocate for. I'm constantly bragging about the services that we receive from them to our clients, and I just think this is something that all business owners should be aware of and obviously take advantage of. I understand that the women's business centers are all over the nation. However, there's a possibility that they may not be reauthorized. So I think if Congress were to assure that, the reauthorization would go through, and then assisting with building their mission, which is to help build more of these businesses and support more women-owned businesses, that would just be invaluable, because I don't think we would be as far as we are now if we didn't have their support.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Ms. Butt, I want to turn to you. I'm sorry, I missed your testimony. You're in Knoxville? Are you right in the city, or are you a little further?
So our farm is about 15 miles, 20 miles east of downtown Knoxville.
Okay, so it's relatively close. This may not apply, but one of the things I believe is that if we can help our rural communities cultivate small businesses and provide opportunities for farmers, but also the businesses that support them and other opportunities that support the economy, we have a better chance at keeping and attracting more young people to these communities and making a difference. You talked, I liked what you said, that your dad made the decision to keep the farm as a farm in perpetuity. But how do we make sure that we're bringing more young people into these communities? What programs might make a difference? You have 21 seconds.
Well, I wasn't in FFA, but that is a great program. Are you familiar with FFA?
I am.
Okay, great. That's a good question. I think that what we're doing on a small scale is, we have actually mostly female employees. And so we have brought a lot of young women to the farm to work who would have never thought they wanted to farm. So it is exposure to something new, and I think on a small scale is what you should focus on rather than large scale.
Yeah, I'm guessing close enough to Knoxville, you have access to broadband where you are.
Well, not at the farm, but close by, yeah.
Oh, no, but we need to make sure that we
Yeah.
have it everywhere. And I think that's one
Yeah.
of the things. I know that I had the chance to install an accounting system in 1985, 86 at a farm in Western Washington, just at the cutting edge of trying to bring up that technology. We need to make sure that our farmers have the technology they need. And
Yeah,
I think broadband's a piece of that. I'm over my time, so I want to thank the chairwoman, and I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman. Now I'd like to recognize Congressman Dr. Joyce for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I won't speak for Chairwoman Finkenauer, but I'll tell you that I feel that we all have great admiration for what you bring to the table and what you do. You truly are the heroes. Look at this subcommittee with Chairwoman Finkenauer leads as a bipartisan support of what you do. I want to address one issue with Mr. Pulford, which he mentioned, and I think distinguishes him from the other panelists, and I, again, applaud you for being here today. Your business, LB Water Services, is an ESOP. An ESOP is an employee-owned business. Would you please address for us as committee and for the entirety here today how ESOPs specifically allow you to progress in the business world and how that allows you to truly be one of the heroes that presents today?
I'd be glad to. Thank you for asking me that question. Oops, yeah, that's even more important. You know, due to the tax advantages that we get as an ESOP from the federal government, we're able to provide superior benefits to all 225 people. We're one of only 3% of the companies in America that provide employee benefits at no cost to the employee, and that includes their families, which is if anybody's in business and knows what it costs per person today, it's a huge expense, and it enables us to excuse me, go back, and it enables us to provide the kind of training, both professionally as well as personally, to help people grow and prosper in their jobs. It helps us to solve problems with our customers, whether it's providing leak detection or leak monitoring advice to a city, or it's providing, you know, the infrastructure that they need. I agree with the person. We are trying to create value in everything we do, and the benefits of the ESOP really give us the fuel that we need every day to provide that kind of success for our employees, all of our employees. You know, I think one of the things we're really proud of is that the last time there was a recession, we grow. So again, we're looking at the ESOP as the foundation. The other thing that it really does for us, and I won't take a lot of time, is that it helps us to create a culture, and the culture is not of I, it's more of we and us. And again, it provides us to provide superior benefits, provides us to put in better training, and the result is that we get employees that don't leave. Once people are vested into the ESOP, we rarely lose an employee that we want to lose. Some people we let go for other reasons maybe, but we're really proud of the record that we have with the employees that we have and the growth that we've have enjoyed. I looked at how much we've grown in the last 5 years, and it's about 50%, and it's all due to the homegrown talent that we provide, and the ESOP is the foundation for all that.
Thank you for that, thank you for that answer. I'd like you to address another issue that you briefly discussed in your presentation with us, Mr. Pulford. You talked about how your industry, how your company, how the heroes that you work with would provide for us additional work in the crumbling infrastructure system. Our responsibility in the 116th Congress is to work and provide an infrastructure solution. Tell us how that impacts your business, please.
Oh, man. it provides a trickle down to every individual, and whether it's they're homegrown. I mean, if you look at cities that when they go to open up a fire hydrant to fight a fire, the hydrant doesn't work. Okay, it's broken and it's been there for months. We need to address these problems. The quality of the drinking water, the fact that pipes are crumbling and it's draining out, so maybe you lose 30% of your treated pure water goes out through leaks in the system. And I'm not saying this across the board, but these are the big issues that are facing us. And if we don't address them, we're not going to be able to attract people to come into our communities, and the quality of life, we're going to lose people out of our jurisdictions and our states and everything else. And that's where the whole infrastructure bill is vital right now. And we see it. We're in the Rust Belt, so we see it just more than probably everybody else in the country right now.
Mr. Polford, thank you. Thank the other small business heroes for being here with us today, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. I just want to say thank you on behalf of the committee and how grateful we are that you all are here today telling us your stories and how they're all such different stories from all over the country, and yet you coming here to Washington, taking the time out of your very busy schedules. And gosh, I know you all are very, very busy right now, especially back in Iowa when we're planting right now, or trying to at least. It means a great deal to have these stories uplifted and told. And you all really are small business heroes. That's not hyperbole. This is something where you all are adding so much to your local communities, but also to the future of our country. And we are all very grateful to hear your perspectives. Mr. Walton, the fact that you are here uplifting what is actually happening on the ground in Iowa, when it can often be lost in the numbers versus the actual stories of what folks are living and going through every day. Thank you. And also highlighting what we can be doing to help move forward here as well, and make sure that we can do everything we can to keep our family farmers afloat right now when, again, we're facing a great deal. So thank you so much for being here. Ms. Reese, you are an inspiration, and it is an honor to get to meet you here today. And the fact that you came here and were able to uplift issues that you face, but then also talk about what has worked and give us ideas of what we should be investing in and creating more of. That's our job here, to hear what has worked, how do we do it better, and also hear what hasn't and how do we fix it. And those are some of the things that actually do happen here in Washington, but very specifically on this committee, where we can hear the details from folks on the ground who've lived it. And thank you so much for helping us do our job better with your testimony here today. Ms. Bhatti, your hope that you shared today, it is infectious, and it's exactly the type of hope that gets folks to have those ideas to start a business and take it to the next level. It's exactly what we need to be seeing more of in our country right now, and the fact that this is something, your story and how you got started, and not just grew up on a farm, but then also decided to expand and have creative ideas and run with it. These are, again, this is what we need to be seeing more of, and it's how our country continues to grow. And thank you so much for all that you've done, and look forward to hearing more about this success, but then also hopefully somebody's going to bring the ice cream to the Small Business Committee. But thank you. And Mr. Polford, thank you for being here today as well. Your dedication to your employees and their success and their growth is palpable, and we could all feel that here today. And grateful for your expertise, especially when it comes to water infrastructure and how incredibly important that is that we make those investments. I also sit on Transportation Infrastructure Committee, Vice Chair of Highways and Transit. So really important that we uplift all of these issues when it comes to infrastructure and how important those are to our businesses. And so thank you for bringing that perspective here today as well. Again, you all have done so much, and I look forward to seeing hopefully a bright future here as well. And we will do our jobs here in Washington, continuing to listen to folks back in our districts and across the country, and hope to make you proud here as well. But thank you so much, and happy National Small Business Week. And with that, I want to make sure that I ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statements and supporting material for the record. Great, and thank you all again, and have a good rest of the afternoon. Without objection, so ordered. Thank you.
Yeah, you need to kind of go forever in Tennessee. So FIT and then A and D.
Yes. Or you could, yeah, our handle is A.
There you are. Perfect. I love it. Oh, good.
How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Long time no see. Doing okay?
Yeah.
You guys want to come to lunch with us?
I'm really hungry. How'd you know? I'm like, where are you going lunch?
We'll go. It's like 2 or 3 blocks away.
Okay, sounds good.
If you go to that, it's a place. We'll go to the thing about the Capitol Hotel, which is a Republican club, but they've got dinner and it's kind of low key.
There
you go, girls. Look at me.
Yeah. As long as we work out together.